What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 8 Chains. Chapter 171 Daily Life on the Island of Tren Adventure Group. Advertise here. It's not all smooth sailing in New World's waters. On the sea, a violent storm quietly struck. The wind roared and the waves stirred up, as if they were about to engulf the Black Pearl. At this time, there was no one on the deck, and the crew hid in the rooms or dining rooms on the second floor. After all, when the storm is raging outside, your own room is always the most comfortable and atmospheric place to be. Captain, according to my calculations, this storm may not pass so quickly. In the room, Xiaohe looked at Tren, who was frowning and focusing on playing puzzles, and said, "Is this storm big?" Tron replied as he continued to look for the missing puzzle pieces. "It's not small anyway." Now, Xiaohe found a puzzle piece and handed it to Tren. "I didn't expect that New World would have such bad weather." Well, after taking the puzzle, Tren thought for a moment and said, "Then see if there is an island nearby that you can dock at. Let's leave the storm circle first and find a place to rest." Okay, Xiaohe nodded, and then quickly got into the cabin of the Black Pearl. Under Xiaohe's control, the Black Pearl turned instantly, slowly left the storm circle, and quietly stranded on a small island at noon the next day. The island is lush and lush, with birds singing and flowers fragrant, and it is peaceful. Everyone walked out of the cabin one after another and set foot on this land. Sure enough, the sun is the best. Thor bathed in the warm sunshine, took a deep breath, and felt the fresh breath brought by the sea breeze. "I'm going to install a balancer on the ship, Steve, let's go together." Big Wolf couldn't wait to take out his invention, the balancer, with a proud smile on his face. "No problem, Mr. Big Wolf." Steve jumped up and down happily and followed Big Wolf towards the ship. At the same time, other crew members also disembarked and set foot on this peaceful island. Tren stepped across the soft sandy beach and looked at the horizon in the distance, feeling a surge of emotion in his heart. Is it an uninhabited island? Then let's rest here. White Bear understands the leader's thoughts. At this time, White Bear walked past Tren, raised his eyebrows, showed a smile of understanding, and led the ninjas of the Shadow Legion to get busy. 1, 2, 1, come on, everyone. At the same time, the cute platelets also carefully walked off the boat holding various ingredients. Their small figures are particularly eye-catching in the sun, full of vitality. "Captain, when can we play again?" When the platelets passed by Tren, they asked this question with expectant faces. Tren frowned. "What is that?" "Haha, it's the defensive weapon I equip, a Gatling weapon that uses energy to convert bullets and doesn't need to be cooled down." Big Wolf said excitedly before he could go far. "Gatling." Tren's eyes widened. "You guys really know how to play." "Captain," Platelet blinked, "we want to play again." Tren scratched his head. "When everything is clear, you go find Uncle Wolf. He will take you to fight Poseidons at sea." "Really? That's great." The platelets cheered. But Terran suddenly thought of something. "You have to find a suitable bait first." "Bait?" The platelets looked at Terran in confusion. "Yes, how can we attract Poseidons without good bait?" Tren said with a smile. "Oh, I understand." The platelets suddenly realized. "Then let's go find Uncle Xiaohe, he must know how to make fishing bait." After saying that, they ran towards the direction of Xiaohe. Big Wolf continued to be busy on the shore, his fingers dexterously moving between various instruments and parts. Steve on the side helped hand over the tools, and occasionally asked some innocent questions, making Big Wolf dumbfounded. "Everyone, let's play beach volleyball." Patrick and SpongeBob set up a simple sand volleyball court on the beach. "I don't want to, we should continue with the beautiful music solo in this weather." Squidward cleared his throat. Gengar. At this moment, Gengar suddenly jumped out of Squidward's shadow and snatched the flute away. "Ah, you guy, give me back my flute." "Just a little." Gengar laughed, running around on the beach with his short legs, causing a burst of laughter. "Thor, tea is the last word. What you drink is extremely bitter. Will you?" Li Jing and Thor sat and chatted at the arranged table. Sadako took Tuanzi to find a flower bush on the island. She excitedly picked various flowers, woven them into garlands and put them on her and Tuanzi's heads, like a real flower fairy. Tom and Jerry accidentally bumped into a honeycomb while chasing and playing, and were chased by bees and fled in all directions, triggering a chaotic and joyful scene. Not far away, Steve and Timo were having a friendly shooting match after finishing their work. They took turns swinging the bow and arrow Steve had created, aiming at a large wooden stake with a bull's eye painted on it. Finally, Chef Bai Shong discovered some wild herbs and spices on the island, and he began to try to use these natural ingredients to prepare dinner for everyone. The afternoon sun shines on the warm beach, and the gentle sea breeze brings the salty taste of the sea and the fresh fragrance of distant flowers. "Let's all come and play volleyball." SpongeBob, who had finished setting up the venue, reluctantly suggested holding a beach volleyball match to liven up everyone's atmosphere. "I think it's good." At this time, Tren and Li Jing quickly organized and divided into two teams, namely, Blue Team, Tom, Patrick, Gengar, Thor, Big Big Wolf. Red Team. Jerry, SpongeBob, Squidward, Li Jing, Steve. Tren himself, Sadako and Tuanzi, who were not able to participate because of their special physique, and Timo, who was squatting on a high tree canopy to act as a scout, acted as referees, while White Bear continued to prepare dinner. The volleyball match has started, the ball is flying in the air, the players are jumping and smashing, cheers and cheers are coming one after another. You must think that a volleyball match should be like this, and Tren thinks so too, but it's not like this. The truth is, as Tren blew the whistle, the red team's SpongeBob fired a speedball without saying a word, and caused an explosion on the sea surface. Yeah, got a point. SpongeBob laughed. At the same time, Tom from the blue team looked at the traces of the light speedball beside him and raised the corners of his mouth slightly, interesting. Then let's change. As these words fell, Tom changed his form instantly. He put on the robe of Sage of Six Paths, with 6 Magatama shining in front of him, and his eyes turned into double Samsara eyes. There are 8 truth-seeking balls suspended behind his back, there is also a truth-seeking ball on the back of his left hand, and the Six Paths tin staff is held in his right hand. Tom, isn't this good? Upon seeing this, Jerry entered the Six Paths form not to be outdone, but unlike Tom, he did not have the Samsara eye. If you want to play like this, I will be serious. Big Grey Wolf, who was originally bored, suddenly laughed, and the dark green dark source on his body burst out crazily. Mr. Big Wolf, I can't let you score. Steve quickly expanded his world. I hope the dumplings will be ready in time. Li Jing shook his head helplessly. Can you eat a ball thrown over by something? Patrick held his hand in his mouth, looking confused. I think the two of us will be the first to be eliminated. Brother Squidward looked at the intense atmosphere between the two teams and felt a bad premonition in his heart. So, at this time, Thor picked up a new volleyball, a flash of excitement flashed in his eyes, and his dragon pupils shrank slightly. At the same time, the arm began to gradually transform into a dragon state, with scales covering it, shining with a metallic luster. She held the volleyball tightly and raised a confident smile on her lips. It's our team's turn to kick off. Chapter 172 Beach Volleyball. Advertise here. Bang. Suddenly a shock wave similar to the propelling flames at the tail of a rocket appeared. The volleyball completely disappears in the friction of the air, so this is a shock wave. No, Thor, are you serious? This is a foul. Brother Squidward instantly raised his hand to create an ice wall. The result was obvious, it was completely unstoppable. When Squidward saw the shock wave that was so close and blew his face out of the waves, he showed a sigh of relief, and turned his head to look at the dumpling on the referee's table, as if to say, in my second life, I'm counting on you. It's too early to give up now, we have 1 point. Suddenly Li Jing stood in front of Brother Squidward, raised his hand, and smiled confidently. In an instant, Li Jing's small palm made Thor's shock wave seem to have encountered something that could not penetrate it at all. When the two collided, they made an earth-shattering noise that shook the entire island, but Li Jing still managed to catch it steadily. Li Jing. Thor looked at Li Jing and frowned, with a very dissatisfied expression. Steve, you can't waste a ball every time. Li Jing, who caught the shock wave with his bare hands, looked sideways at Steve and smiled. No problem. Steve took out the bedrock ball directly. If you want to ask if bedrock is not a block, then you are underestimating the module. SpongeBob, get ready to serve. Steve directly threw the bedrock ball high, and at the same time took out the craftsman's hammer with his left hand, craftsman's soul, sonic boom. Speed is power. Ha ha ha. SpongeBob ran out of the speed of light, spinning in circles to the limit. Truth-seeking ball attached. Jerry directly attached the truth-seeking ball to SpongeBob's feet. Happy kick SpongeBob. SpongeBob directly hooked himself upside down with a golden hook and shot out. This kick carried unparalleled power and speed, as if a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky and went straight away. This is interesting. Everyone. Tom let out a burst of signature laughter, his body trembling slightly, as if he was full of anticipation for the next challenge. So, just when Tom was about to jump up, Big Big Wolf suddenly appeared and pressed his shoulders hard. I'll give it a try. Big Big Wolf said confidently. He first used the power of the dark source to try to reduce the power, but soon found that this was not enough. As a result, Big Big Wolf decisively transformed into Iron Man form, clenching his hands and preparing to face the impact. However, when the ball came into contact with his palm, he immediately felt a strong pressure. It's a bit hard to bear. Big Big Wolf couldn't help shouting. Still, he persevered, skimming the ball upwards in an attempt to change its trajectory. So let me. Tom let out his signature laugh again, ready to take over. But at this moment, the super-evolved Gengar suddenly emerged from midair. Gengar. Gengar appeared using his special ability to penetrate into subspace, and quickly activated the skill Mirror attribute. A huge mirror appeared in front of Gengar, reflecting attacks from below. At the same time, Patrick Star was not to be outdone and directly launched lava, forming a spectacular scene. SpongeBob, I won't lose. Patrick shouted loudly. Planetary devastation. When Tom saw this, he activated his ability without hesitation to absorb the lava from Planet Patrick, and shouted triumphantly. Jerry, give in. After Tom finished shouting, Thor suddenly jumped up, used a dragon tail swing, and struck with all his strength. Bang! There was a loud noise, and the air seemed to freeze for a moment. I don't believe you can just do it. Steve, I will never let you score again. Steve jogged and jumped. Takumi. Slow. However, at this moment, a cold breath came from behind him. Frozen sleep. At the same time, half of Squidward's face was frozen and he breathed out a trace of ice. Tom. Partners unite as one, this is our consciousness. Jerry shouted loudly, stimulating the fighting spirit of his teammates. Jerry's Six Paths ability is similar to Hamura's. When he puts his hands together, a powerful energy affects the rotating sphere. Six Paths. Time seal. Jerry used his skill to seal part of it. I'm sorry, Thor, I'm going next. Li Jing opened his left hand and steadily caught the bedrock ball. For a time, the atmosphere on the field was extremely tense. The blue team is good at attacking, while the red team is good at defending. A glimmer of fighting spirit flashed in the eyes of both teams, because they knew that they could defeat each other only by going all out. It can also be said that only their partners can make them use their full strength unscrupulously. Kick off. Both sides shouted at the same time, and the game continued. On the other side, the referees stand, no. It should be, on the Black Pearl that has sailed dozens of miles into the sea. Tren looked at the scene on the island and smacked his lips, as this how beach volleyball is played. Judging from the rules that White Bear knows. Before White Bear could finish his words, another air wave similar to a nuclear explosion struck, but fortunately, the balance device installed by Grey Wolf and Steve, the Black Pearl not affected. That's not the rule. Bai Shang blinked. Then as referees, should we come forward and say something? Timo opened his mouth. I don't think it will be safe in the past. Really? Sadako pursed her lips, and suddenly a laser beam passed by the Black Pearl and exploded. I think what Sadako said is not wrong at all. Tren looked at the perfect Susano on the left side of the island and the Senju cousin on the right side of the island, as well as the ones that had already broken away from the beach and used the island as a golf course. The two teams, divided in half, nodded silently. It will definitely not feel good if I go there now. On the other side, the platelets who were playing click on the side of the ship looked at the Poseidon type who was instantly killed by the laser. His eyes once again flashed with stars as he looked at Xiaohei, who had just crawled out of the sea and had kelp on his head. You, little black puff pastry. Okay, I'll just go into the sea. Xiaohei shook his head helplessly, then silently tied the rope around his waist again, stood on the guardrail, and took a deep breath. He opened his arms, felt the sea breeze, and said softly, the Black Pearl is blown by the sea breeze, spring and autumn. Oops. However, before he could finish his sigh, he was suddenly hit by a powerful blast of air, and his whole body was instantly knocked into the sea. Chapter 173 Bounty Update. Advertise here. Roar. With a dragon roar cannon fired from Thor, this uninhabited island completely disappeared into the new world. That night, Black Pearl, restaurant. Everyone sat around the dining table, sharing their respective game performances and interesting stories. Laughter and conversation broke out one after another, full of warmth and happiness. It was obvious that everyone who had completely let go was very happy. Steve, I want to ask you, is my move back to the moon powerful? Big Wolf hugged Steve and laughed. It's really powerful. If it hadn't been for my ultimate explosion at the last moment, I might not have been able to stop it. Steve said proudly with the corner of his mouth raised. It's a pity that you still won. Although Big Wolf lost the game, there was no trace of frustration on his face because he really enjoyed the game. Yeah, who told us to have SpongeBob? Steve looked at SpongeBob aside and joked with a smile. Because I scored the crucial first point. SpongeBob stood up and shouted excitedly, his unique tone filling the entire restaurant. SpongeBob, that was a sneak attack. Patrick complained dissatisfied. What sneak attack? It's obviously a reflection of my strength. SpongeBob retorted. It's so boring. If I had known I'd be a referee too. Squidward muttered as he looked at the food in front of him and took a bite listlessly. But you still had a lot of fun. Sadako looked at Squidward and smiled. Is there any? Brother Squidward asked with a puzzled look on his face. I really should have let you see your smile at that time. Li Jing added. Gengar, you should have done this, and then that. Gengar. Timo led Gengar to the corner, and the two opened their own chat channel. Oh, Jerry, how can you eat this? You will be hungry at night. On the other side, Tom thoughtfully inserted a large steak for Jerry and put it on his plate. Oh, Tom, you are really my good brother. Come and open your mouth. Jerry also picked up an orange with a knife and fork and handed it to Tom's mouth. Tom didn't even peel it and ate it in one bite. If you two hadn't been the most fierce in the competition, I would have thought that you two were pure good brothers. Tren looked at this disgusting scene and rubbed his eyebrows. I thought I could prepare a bonfire party. Unexpectedly, the island is gone. Bai Shang had already prepared the meal and sat aside to take a sip of sweet wine. Oh, Tom, who had eaten the orange in one bite, was about to sigh, but his mouth was blocked with an apple by Thor, who had returned from carrying the tail dish. Just eat. Don't Thor said and sat down next to Tren. Captain, this is the finale of tonight. Thor blinked and stared at Tren. Could this be? Looking at Thor's little expression, Tren opened the lid without saying a word, and what he saw was the meat buns. What's wrong? Captain, I came here specifically to learn from Bai Shang. Damn. Looking at these minced meats, Tren hesitated. Compared with the previous ones, he could tell at a glance. Steamed tail meat, grilled tail meat, tail steak, tail meat skewers, and pan-fried tail. This so-called Rujamo is even more elusive. Captain, why don't you eat? That's right, I seem to be full. After saying this, Tren stood up instantly. As a result, Thor pressed down on Tren's shoulders and pushed him back into the chair. Then he turned over and rode up directly, and picked up the meat buns with his left hand. Damn it, I didn't expect that the person who rides the dragon will eventually be ridden. Tren looked at Thor with an expression of letting anyone pick and choose. Looking at Tren and Thor, Sadako sighed silently. If the leader finds out, Thor always washes his clothes with his mouth. Forget it, sometimes it's better for the leader to be simple. 3 days later, if there was a possibility that the internal strife information that Marine had received before was false, at this moment, they would completely believe it because the so-called beach volleyball match destroyed the island. After all, the scope was very wide. Especially the roar of the dragon in the late stage of nursery, which is almost impossible to ignore. At the same time, almost a month has passed since the end of the war on the top, and world government has released the latest bounty of the Tren Adventure Group. Captain, I finally have a wanted order. Thor held the newspaper with excitement and trotted over. It's updated again. Has anyone else seen it? Tren asked with a smile. They all got their own wanted warrants. Tren took the newspaper and frowned at the title, 4 Emperors. This can't be called them anymore. The most terrifying pirate group in the world. The picture on the newspaper headline was exactly the scene when Tren appeared in the battle on the top. He stood in front of the members, his left hand resting on the hilt of the gambling sword, looking down at the battlefield with cold eyes. This photo is quite handsome. Tren couldn't help laughing. Yeah, I really didn't expect that we would be reported like this. Thor also laughed. Haha, we have to be careful in the future. After all, we are the focus of the whole world's attention now. Tron Adventure Group, leader, the best of the 4 emperors, the pure, evil, Jenny Tron, bounty, 6.78 billion Baileys. Close black lens bracket. This is me. Thor showed his wanted poster. Tren Adventure Group, made, dragon servant Thor, bounty, 3.1 billion belly. Close black lens bracket. No, why are mine with Tom, Jerry? Tom and Jerry shouted in unison. Tren Adventure Group, combatants, red flower double stick Tom and Jerry, bounty, 4.9 billion Baileys. I have it too, hee hee. In the Big Wolf laboratory, Steve scratched the back of his head. I should be taller than Li Jing. Big Wolf rarely stopped to admire his bounty. Tren Adventure Group, craftsman, Cube Man Steve, bounty, 3 billion Baileys. Close black lens bracket. Tren Adventure Group, inventor, Shadow Wolf King Big Wolf, bounty, 4.34 billion Baileys. Close black lens bracket. It's faded. Everything has faded. Li Jing looked at the calm sea and sighed deeply. Tren Adventure Group, deputy leader, Sword Ghost Li Jing, bounty, 4.22 billion Baileys. It's okay, Tuanzi and I don't care anymore. Sadako, with a hollow voice, smiled. Tren Adventure Group, Garden Pruner, Cursed Ghost Sadako, bounty, 850 million Baileys. Tren Adventure Group, Ship Doctor and Pet, Mountain God Dumpling, bounty of 1.26 billion Baileys. On the observation deck, Timo stared at Gengar's bounty with a curious look on his face and patted him on the shoulder. Work hard and you can be like me. Gengar. Gengar has no idea what this is, he only knows that it has his own picture on it. Tren Adventure Group, Sniper, Ghost Agent Timo, bounty, 1.76 billion belly. Tren Adventure Group, Scouts, Shadow Eater Gengar, bounty, 1.43 billion Baileys. The taste is still a bit bland. In the kitchen, Bai Shang was trying out new dishes, and the reward order was pressed down by the dish. Tren Adventure Group, Chef, Naked White Bear, bounty, 410 million Baileys. The 3 generals of Bikini Castle, except for SpongeBob who was excited, the others performed very dull. Tren Adventure Group, Sous Chef, Fake General Huang Mian, bounty, 2.25 billion Baileys. Tren Adventure Group, Artistic Star, False General Akahoshi, bounty, 2.25 billion Baileys. Tren Adventure Group, a musician who can only play the flute, Fake General Qingzong, bounty, 2.25 billion Baileys. Chapter 174 Candy Island. Advertise here. New World, the Totland Sea area, which is where the BIGMOM pirates are located. The 10,000 Kingdoms created by Anti is actually an archipelago composed of 34 islands in a general layout. It is somewhat similar to Rocky Port in front of the Pirate Hive Island. These islands are also natural defenses. They are completely located in the surroundings and perfectly protect the Cake Island in the center, and the 34 islands are also guarded by Anti's children, 34 ministers. Wow, Nangsheng is different. They are all my own family here. Tren stood on the bow of the boat, looking at the archipelago consisting of 34 islands in front of him. Each island was given the name of various desserts. It looks spectacular. Not only are the names of these islands related to desserts, but their themes also correspond to them, as if they are in a dreamlike world. Patrick, does this kind of place really exist? SpongeBob poked Patrick's shoulder with his finger and asked with a look of disbelief on his face. The land of dreams. Patrick was so excited that his saliva began to flow, and his eyes shone with excitement. At this time, on the observation deck of the Black Pearl, Timo was observing the situation ahead through the sniper scope. Suddenly, Timo removed his sniper scope and said, "Captain, the island in front seems to signal us to stop there." Hearing Timo's words, Xiao He, who was in charge of driving, turned his head and looked at Tren. "Captain. Come closer. Anyway, we have arrived at 10,000 kingdoms." Tren smiled slightly. So, the Black Pearl sailed towards the island ahead. This island called Candy Island is located in the southwest of Cake Island. The entire island is filled with the sweet smell of candy, making people salivate. Finally, the Black Pearl slowly docked at the harbor of this Candy Island. Of course, not many people were interested this time, so Thor, SpongeBob, and Patrick accompanied Tren off the ship, and everyone else stayed on the Black Pearl to do their own things. Li Jing was supposed to get off the boat, but when he looked at Baishang's new, one-bite cake, he chose the former between afternoon tea and Tren. Cough, 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 cough. At this time, a middle-aged man with a slender figure, a pointed face and heavy makeup at the harbor of Candy Island came over with another devilish smile. He has a long nose and a tongue that reaches to his chest, and has long dark blue hair with light blue moderate dots. He wears a top hat with several lollipops on his head. He usually wears a long light yellow coat with a large light yellow collar and a candy cane in his hand. Charlotte Parosparrow, member of the Big Mom Pirates, user of the Paramesha Devil Fruit-licking fruit, with a bounty of 700 million Baileys. Welcome, Captain Tren. I am Charlotte Parosparrow, Minister of Candy in Totland. I am in charge of Candy Island and my mother's eldest son. Please allow me to greet you at this time. Charlotte Parosparrow bowed down respectfully, his voice with a hint of flattery and flattery. Tren looked at the respectful man in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little confused. Parosparrow, if I remember correctly, Cake Island is the destination of the invitation, right? Tren said, looking at this guy. When Parosparrow heard Terran's question, his face showed a hint of embarrassment, but he quickly returned to his smile. Mom's invitation will naturally say Cake Island. But it's entirely out of my inner admiration that I trouble you to take a break at Candy Island. Quote. As this so, Tren didn't think much about it. After all, Auntie's steel balloon wasn't that good looking either. The scenery on Candy Island was even prettier than Auntie's. Did you know, Captain Tren, from the moment you became famous, I have admired your achievements all the time. Your heroic appearance and your strength have fascinated me deeply. It is really my pleasure to see you in person today. What an honor. Parosparrow continued, his tone full of admiration. Tren listened to Parosparrow's gushing praises, but still kept a polite smile. However, as time went by, Parosparrow talked more and more, and Tren began to wonder if this man had obsessive-compulsive disorder or perfectionism. He constantly praised Tren's achievements, even detailing them. Do you still remember that battle? You faced the enemy's siege alone, but you were not afraid, and finally defeated them with an absolute advantage. That scene is so exciting. And your weapon, that sword, is simply a work of art. Parosparrow said excitedly, with light shining in his eyes. Tren sighed helplessly, thinking that this guy was really a talker. However, he had to admit that Parosparrow knew him very well. This guy's words are a bit secretive. Thor frowned as he looked at Parosparrow, who kept praising Tren. I think so too, but I am very happy to hear it. No wonder ancient emperors liked treacherous ministers. The corners of Tren's mouth raised slightly unconsciously. Okay, needless to say, I know how good I am. Tren waved his hand. Finally, Parosparrow seemed to realize that he had said too much, and quickly stopped talking and said with a smile, I'm sorry, Captain Tren, I can't stop talking about your deeds. I hope you don't mind. Quote. It's okay. If you keep talking, your crutch will be eaten clean. My crutch. Upon hearing this, Parosparrow couldn't help but be stunned, repeated in confusion, and then lowered his head. Only then did he find a huge starfish lying on the ground, greedily chewing on his candy cane. You are. Parosparrow's eyes widened with shock on his face, and he jumped away quickly, keeping a certain distance from the starfish and staring at it warily. At the same time, fine beads of sweat began to appear on his forehead. You should know that his younger brother Katakuri possesses powerful hockey, and he had asked Katakuri for advice before to practice hockey. However, at this moment, facing the situation in front of him, he was completely unaware of the existence of this guy, and the most important thing was his own licking fruit. The various shapes of candies and syrups created can only be released by knocking yourself down or voluntarily. Apart from these 2 points, they will only melt when exposed to high temperatures. Patrick, it's very rude of us to do this. At this time, SpongeBob came over and grabbed Patrick. But candy is for eating. SpongeBob. Patrick blinked and retorted confidently. After all, Patrick always has his own reasons. It's wasteful and impolite for him to use it as a crutch. After saying that, he swallowed the remaining candy in one gulp, then licked it crazily in his mouth, making a chirp, chirp, chirp sound. High temperature. This starfish is the fake General Red Star. In fact, we can't blame Perospero for not recognizing it. After all, there is still a big difference between the three generals of Bikini Castle who don't wear the general's cloak. Especially Patrick, a pure idiot. P.S. Among those selected for the big list are Succubus, Albal. Squatting in the boat. Holy Lord. There are also some positions such as navigator, who observes the weather, ship steward, bartender, etc. that everyone needs to choose. As for the minions, if they appear, they cannot be alone, Sashanyu is still considering it. Chapter 175 Charlotte Perospero. Advertise here. It's okay. It's just a crutch. Cough, cough, cough. A smile appeared on Perospero's face, as if he didn't care about the missing crutch. He is the eldest son of the Charlotte family and one of the top leaders of the Big Mom Pirates. He is not stupid. With a cough, Perospero activated his ability again and recreated a crutch. He held the new crutch in his hand and said with a smile, "Now let me lead you, Captain Tren, to the town of Peloran. My sister's wedding banquet won't start so soon." Quote. Lord Perospero. Just when Perospero was about to take Tren and others to the town of Perolan, two minions hurried over. They were breathing heavily, shouting Perospero's name as they ran. Perospero stopped and looked at the two minions in front of him, frowning slightly. Minister Do, Lord Dafu, he. These two people looked very panicked, as if they had something important to tell him. However, before they could finish their words, suddenly, a thick layer of syrup condensed on their bodies. The syrup spread quickly and tightly wrapped their bodies, as if they were wearing a hard armor. Then, more candies came from all directions, invading their bodies continuously. These candies not only deprive them of breathing, but also affect all other physiological functions. After a while, their bodies became extremely stiff and unable to move. The two minions completely turned into candy men and eventually suffocated to death. Perospero watched this scene quietly with cold eyes, raised the candy cane in his hand, and uttered, "Candy man." Perfect hospitality, there should be no other factors. There was a hint of displeasure in Perospero's voice. As a person who pursues perfection, he hated any factors that might ruin his plans or interfere with his actions. There are so many children of Bigmom and those with Paramesha fruit abilities. Tren looked at this scene and smiled slightly, with a harmonious expression. Sorry, Perospero said with a smile as well. Immediately afterwards, the five people came to the town of Peloran together. This place is different from Candy Island, because Perospero's fruit ability has not yet awakened, so his ability cannot have any impact on this island. Therefore, the candy features on the island are all built with building materials, but the town of Peloran is very different. Almost all the buildings here were created by Perospero's ability to lick fruits, so it is completely a candy town. It's a real candy town. Long live. Patrick first licked the street lamp, and then hugged the house and gnawed it. Wow, it's delicious. Patrick's eyes lit up and saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth. Captain, I'm going to watch Patrick star. SpongeBob said, but the excitement in his eyes could not be hidden. He couldn't wait to explore this wonderful place. Go. Thor is here. Tren smiled and nodded in agreement. Looking at SpongeBob and Patrick who had disappeared, Tren waved his hand with a helpless smile on his face. The two of them, looking at SpongeBob running away, Thor pouted and said with some dissatisfaction, "What a headache. Do you want to go too?" Tren looked at Thor and asked, with a hint of teasing in his eyes. I don't want to. I am Captain Tren's personal maid. Thor puffed out her chest and raised her chin proudly. She wanted to stick to her position and take good care of Captain Trent. After chatting like this for a while, Tren and Thor came to the candy house in the center of Perolan town, and came to the lobby under the reception of Perospero. Captain Tren, why don't you sit down? Perospero looked at Tren and asked doubtfully. Is this chair non-stick? Looking at the chair made of candy, Tren hesitated. Haha, not at all. Although my fruit's ability is to create syrup, once it materializes, it will have no other properties except when exposed to high temperatures. That's good. After hearing this, Tren sat down without ceremony and touched the table. It was indeed as Perospero said, it was no different from ordinary tables and chairs. Thor did not sit down, but stood quietly beside Tren. Speak. Tren looked at Perospero, who had a long tongue and raised corners of his mouth. The two guys you just turned into candy men, the minister of bean in your mouth, Dafu. If I remember correctly, his name is Charlotte Dafu, Aunt's third son, which is also your brother, right? Seeing that Tren got to the point so directly, Perospero stopped beating around the bush and asked directly, Captain Tren, what do you think of our Bigmom pirates? How else can I look at it? It's just that you Bigmom are pretty good at giving birth. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor suddenly put his hand on Tren's shoulder and gave a thumbs up as if to say, I can do it too. Quote. Indeed, my mother has never stopped since I was born. Perospero didn't care about Thor, after all, he was the guy with a bounty of 3.1 billion. Our Bigmom pirate group became the New World 4 Emperors group by relying on the blood ties between brothers, sisters and relatives and the strength of our mother. Perospero said with a proud face, but now. Quote. When the conversation changed, Perospero's face showed a hint of helplessness, Mom has recently become obsessed with using my sisters to marry other forces, such as Capone this time. Hearing this, Tren frowned slightly, but quickly regained his composure. Isn't it normal that I can't bear to give birth? After saying that, Tren was about to take a sip of the hot cocoa in front of him. However, before he could take action, Thor quickly took the cup away and handed it to him. Seeing Tren's surprised expression, Thor smiled and explained, "Drink. Don't praise me." At this time, Perospero continued, "Mother longs to create a utopia where all races and species can live in harmony. But those outsiders, how can they understand what my mother is thinking? They have no such dream at all." At the end of the sentence, Perospero's voice became deeper, and he seemed to be full of worries about the future. So, the corner of Tren's mouth raised slightly, with a hint of teasing in his eyes. He raised his eyes and stared at Perospero, and asked softly, "Are you treating yourself as a BIGMOM pirate? The heir to the throne? Charlotte Perospero." Upon hearing this, Perospero's expression changed instantly. However, he soon regained his composure, and that ugly smile appeared on his face again. "I am my mother's eldest son," Perospero said flatly. "I love all my younger brothers and sisters." Tron looked at Perospero's smile and asked, "How old are you?" Perospero was obviously caught off guard by this question, but he quickly reacted and replied, 50. Although his tone remained calm, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. After hearing this, Tren suddenly realized in his heart, after all, how can there be a prince in the world for 50 years? Chapter 176 Doubt. Advertise here. While Thrawn was chatting with Perospero in the town of Paralan, the ministers of other islands also got the news. Boli Fen town in Wheat Island. He is tall, with short amaranth red hair, strong muscles, slender legs, and a patched scar on each cheek. Wearing a pair of black gloves, a thorn ring on the left arm, black jeans, a white knee pad on the left knee, and a black knee pad on the right knee. Wearing a pair of black leather boots with thorns, pink tattoos on his left arm, left upper body and left back, and a white scarf like a flower. The flower minister Katakuri, whose overall clothing style is full of strong black metal style, looked at the two people in front of him with a calm expression. Perospero, did he really recruit the Tron adventure group to his own Candy Island? The top 3 generals of the Big Mom Pirates, Charlotte. Katakuri, a user with the Paramesha Nuo fruit ability, with a bounty of 1,057,000,000 Baileys. As the core figure of the family, Katakuri is the #1 most popular brother in the Charlotte family, the backbone of the Big Mom Pirates, and is known as the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family. Although he is stationed on Wheat Island, it is obvious that he will not stay here very often, because Auntie will ask him to go to Cake Island for every party. That's right. I originally wanted to go over and talk to him, but he ignored me at all, and the person who went to notify me had no news. He is tall and strong, with slender limbs. He has short yellow hair, a mustache, earrings, and a blue cotton padded jacket. The epaulets on his clothes look like 2 mochis, and he wears a yellow cloak. Charlotte Daifuku, who wore a belt with a magic lamp symbol on her waist, said with a gloomy expression. The third son of BIGMOM, Bean Minister Charlotte Daifuku, Paramesha, the person with the ability to transpire fruit, the bounty is 300 million belly. That guy just wants to betray his mother. Dafu's character is completely mission-oriented, ruthless, so he directly suspects Perospero. What? Suddenly a loud voice came from beside Dafu's ears, causing him to move a little bit. Perospero, that traitor, let's just go and kill him. He is tall and muscular, with orange hair that is divided into 3 fan-shaped sections. The color of his hair gradually becomes darker from bottom to top, thick eyebrows, and an orange beard on his chin. Charlotte Owen, who has no clothes on her upper body and only wears an orange cloak, has a strong personality, a hot temper and a high degree of loyalty to her family, shouted. The fourth son of Big Mom, Charlotte Owen, the burnt minister, Paramesha, a user with the power of the hot fruit, with a bounty of 300 million Baileys. At this moment, the triplets Charlotte Katakuri, Charlotte Daifuku, and Charlotte Owen are all gathered in Belifen town. Quiet. Looking at his 2 brothers with obvious character flaws, Katakuri shouted coldly. For a moment, the powerful pressure directly shocked the 2 people in place. Brother Katakuri. Looking at Katakuri's eyes, Dafu and Owen swallowed, then sat down quietly. Perospero. Although he is usually talkative and loves to tease his brothers, as the eldest son, it is absolutely impossible for him to betray his mother. When Katakuri said this, both Daifuku and Owen frowned. Then what does he mean? Those guys are fighting at the top and destroying the red-haired pirates. Owen patted the table. His character couldn't speak quietly. What if Perospero promised the territory of all nations and asked the Tren adventure group to help him? Don't forget, Perospero calls himself the #1 heir almost every day. Dafu raised his eyes and stared at Katakuri, and continued with a cold tone. Also, he has been having his own opinions on his mother's new developments recently, so I suspect there is nothing wrong with him. Mom's new development. Hearing this sentence, Katakuri also fell silent. He also opposed using his sister as a tool to contact outside forces. In other words, Auntie's first few children were the first to experience the benefits of bloodline twisting, and they knew that their family would not betray this. So, Brother Katakuri, why don't we go to Candy Island? Dafu and Owen said at the same time. The reason why they came to Katakuri was because of the Black Pearl parked in Candy Island Harbor. After all, they are guests invited by Mother. It is indeed rude for Perospero to do this. Katakuri sighed. He knew very well what his two brothers were thinking. Let's go to Candy Island. Candy Island, town of Paralan. These outsiders are not worthy of marrying our Charlotte family. So, I hope you can kill Capone directly at the wedding. Perospero said with a heavy look in his eyes, staring at Tren closely. Hearing this, Tren couldn't help but chuckle, then took a deep look at Perospero, and said slowly, I thought. You need me to kill Charlotte Linlin. His voice was low and calm, but it revealed a majesty that could not be ignored. After hearing this, Perospero's face instantly became very ugly, and his body trembled slightly, as if suppressed by an invisible force. His eyes widened and he looked at Tren in horror. His lips trembled slightly, but he could not speak. At this moment, Perospero suddenly felt a chill rising from his spine, and he shuddered involuntarily. 20% Perospero. 295% summoning. Looking at the system prompts, a playful smile appeared on Tren's face, and he raised his eyebrows slightly. He continued in a low and magnetic voice. You should know my strength and abilities, right? As long as I am willing, Linlin will disappear from this world, which is easy for me. So now the question is, do you need such an opportunity? As long as Linlin is gone, I can make you the new captain of the BIGMOM pirates. At that time, the development direction of the entire pirate group will be in your hands, and you have the final say. Tron's words were full of temptation, and every word was like a devil's whisper, quietly entering Perospero's ears. Faced with such attractive conditions, it would be an absolute lie to say that you were not tempted. After all, humans are animals with desires, and no one can completely resist the temptation of power and status. However, at this moment, Perospero suddenly raised his hand and gave himself a loud slap in the face. Then, he quickly jumped back, and at the same time used the fruit's ability to build a strong candy wall, separating himself from Tren at a safe distance. Captain Tren, please stop talking. I will never betray my mother. Perospero's tone was firm and decisive, with loyalty shining in his eyes. Although he may have been shaken deep in his heart, in the end he chose to stick to his loyalty. Chapter 177. Tom and Jerry have an idea. Advertise here. In Candy Island Harbor, the huge and majestic Black Pearl docked quietly on the shore. As far as the eye can see, everything is filled with colorful Madara candy houses. On the observation deck, Timo put down his sniper rifle out of boredom. Stop looking, it's okay. Xiao He patted the table. Gengar frowned and stared at his hand. On the deck, Li Jing, White Bear, and Brother Squidward were leisurely leaning on the deck chairs. I'm not used to being so quiet for a while. Li Jing grabbed a dried fruit and threw it into his mouth. SpongeBob isn't here, and neither is Patrick. Tom and Jerry also got off the boat to play. It's a magical day, Squidward and White Bear murmured at the same time. However, there are turbulent waves hidden under the calm surface, and the world government's CP organization quietly landed on Candy Island. On the east side of Candy Island, members of the CP organization wear black robes and cleverly hide in the shadows. One of the members, who looked like an operations captain, asked softly, where is the target person now? Another CP member responded, the exact location of Tom and Jerry has been revealed to us by members of the original Candy Island garrison. At this time, another CP member suggested, for this mission, we should first try to get in touch with the blue cat named Tom. However, the operation leader smiled slightly and said there was no need to try. Obviously, he was well aware of the last volleyball match played by Tren and others, so the world government was more confident in this mission. Then, the operation leader added, the order from above is first to instigate rebellion against both of them at the same time. Moreover, maybe this time the entire Tren adventure group can be dismantled in one fell swoop. The sudden change of missions made the CP members who had already been lurking on Candy Island a little overwhelmed for a while, but they finally decided to obey the command. Finally, CP members responded in unison, yes. As a ray of sunlight swept through the curtains of the house where the CP organization met, the two teams were ready to go to the target location to make first contact with Tom and Jerry. Candy Island, West Shore. A small number of merchant ships and ships transporting candy shuttle back and forth on the sea. The calls of seagulls and the sound of waves crashing on the shore are intertwined, forming a unique symphony in the port. Jerry, I don't know where he went. He's bored. Tom walked along the shore alone. At the same time, 3 CP organizers in suits in front of Tom walked towards him at a leisurely pace. Hello, Tom. Just as he passed by Tom, CP members stopped him instantly. Do you also want to dance? Tom raised his eyes slightly, and his plain pupils instantly evolved from 3 Magatama to Samsara eyes. The two sides looked at each other, and a CP member took the lead in reaching out his hand and said in a sincere tone, Captain Tom, I am a CP from World Government. I think we will have many common interests to discuss. Quote. World Government. Tom was silent for a moment, with the corner of his mouth slightly raised, looking at the suits of the 3 of them, and then said, what do you want to talk about? Seeing that Tom didn't kill them immediately, the 3 Grandmaster negotiators looked happy, it's going to work. On behalf of world government, I sincerely invite you to join. Join. Do you mean to let me betray Captain Tren? Tom sneered. The representative of the CP organization had sharp and cunning eyes. He stared at Tom and said slowly, Tom, as long as you are willing to join the world government, you will receive unimaginable benefits. First of all, the world government will give you a legal island, and the vast fertile land is yours, and you can plan it as you like. A legal island country is something that ordinary pirates dare to think about but cannot do. Compared with the precarious pirate career, I think you should choose it for yourself. Quote. Haha. Tom continued to sneer, and the CP members thought that he disliked the poor conditions, so they continued to speak, we already know your news. You are not welcome at all in the Tren adventure group. You are obviously stronger, but Jenny Tren doesn't know how to take it seriously at all. And that mouse named Jerry. Who is he? He can even share the same bounty with you. The CP members became more and more excited as they talked, as if they wanted to turn all the dissatisfaction in their hearts into Jerry's fault and vent it out. I saw him constantly belittling, suppressing, looking down on Jerry, comparing him with Tom, trying to make Tom understand his own value. However, he did not realize that his behavior was gradually irritating Tom. And, the CP member was about to continue talking when he suddenly felt his companion tugging at his clothes. So he patted his companion's hand impatiently and said, Don't pull me, I haven't finished speaking yet. No. No. The member swallowed, his voice trembling a little, I think it would be better not to continue talking. Huh. The CP member in charge of the negotiation noticed that Tom's face became very ugly, and there was a trace of murderous intent in his eyes. He was startled and stumbled backward unconsciously. Ha 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 ha. Tom laughed wildly, his laughter deafening. There was a kind of confidence and arrogance in his eyes, and he seemed to be full of absolute confidence in his own strength. Jerry is my lifelong enemy. The leader once said that he and I are destined to intersect, and only he can fight with me. At this point, Tom suddenly paused. Then, he slowly raised his head, his strange samsara eyes shining with a deep and mysterious light. If he is really that weak and unbearable, then who am I? Tom said with a self-mockery in his tone. After a while, the three CP members all disappeared without any suspense, and Tom put on the suit of one of them and muttered to himself, World government. Then, he started from there. The man took out a cigar from his pocket, held it in his mouth, raised his head slightly, and started smoking in a decent manner. Jay, are you listening? At the same time, in the alley of the commercial street on the west side of Peloran town, Jerry had several corpses of CP lying next to him, and he himself also changed into a suit. Tang, you know, I've been listening. P.S. Summoning list. There are 3 summoning positions next. Choose the top 3 by voting. 1. Combatant. Kung Fu Panda Po. 2. Ship Craftsman. Demigod Orn, Family Guy Dumplings. 3. Living Staff. Archaeologist, Gnosis. 4. Intern, Little King Kong, Brother Corpse. Because the character plot needs to be arranged, the new list will not be included in the selection. The new summoning list includes Succubus, Albal. Squatting in the Boat. Holy Lord. Weapon Teacher. Cell Man, White King. Sailing Weather Forecast. Poseidon, which version has not been decided yet. Bartender. Ace Kano, this should not be considered a person. Under consideration, Butler. Dragonman Basseth. Disobedient Action Team. Penguins of Madagascar. Chapter 178. So, immerse yourself in the darkness of Mangekyo. Advertise here. Candy Island, Town of Paralan. Open black lens bracket 25% Perospero close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 320% summon close black lens bracket. Perospero looked at Tren, who was sitting on the chair with the corner of his mouth raised, and Thor, who was standing next to him. He couldn't help but feel a little scared. He swallowed. For a while, the atmosphere was so quiet that it was scary, and only Peros was left. Peros gasped. Sure enough, people still need some excitement. Tren looked at the spiritual emotions in his hand and was secretly happy. Then he smiled at Perospero and said, Don't be so nervous, I'm just joking with you. Captain Tren, you can't make this joke casually. Hearing Terran's words, Perospero breathed a sigh of relief, but he still did not dare to let down his guard. He knew Tren's strength, and if he really wanted to kill him, it would be easy. Thinking of this, he quickly said, If you kill Capone, my mother will never fall out with you. After hearing this, Tren showed a faint smile on his face. He did not express his position immediately, but continued to stare at Perospero, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, Tren finally asked, So, why do you think I want to help you get rid of Capone? Cough, cough, cough. Perospero laughed and shook his long tongue, as if to show off his uniqueness. Then, he took out a few photos from his arms and placed them gently on the table. These are my 3 sisters. However, before he could finish speaking, there was a sudden loud noise, bang. It turned out that Thor broke the table with his foot. Thor said with an unhappy look on his face. Ah. Why are there flies here? It's so careless. I don't know if this fly will fly on someone's head next time. I know I'm worried. They might also be married off by their mother. Perospero's expression changed, and the topic changed instantly. Is this so? It seems that Auntie really can't give birth. Tren also nodded frequently in agreement. Didn't I say this at the beginning? Thor frowned and said impatiently. Is there any? It seems that I have a bad brain after eating too much sugar. Sparrow raised his left hand slightly, and a candy table was created again. Ha ha. Thor snorted coldly and did not continue speaking. If Captain Tren agrees, I can make the decision and give you the proceeds from the 4 kingdoms. Sparrow stated the conditions. Profits from 4 islands. Seeing Terran's hesitation, Sparrow continued, you must know that Capone is just a supernova. Before he went to sea, he was just a mafia, so his value is just like this. As Sparrow said, the candy table appeared syrup bulges like small islands. Milk Island Cheese Town, Fruit Island Punch Town, Ingredient Island Decoration Town, and Jam Island Nor Town. These 4 islands have a lot of revenue from foreign trade. What do you think? Upon hearing this, Terran and Thor looked at each other and remained silent. But if you make such an arbitrary decision, Big Mom probably won't agree. There are also the ministers of these 4 islands. I have communicated with these 4 younger brothers. As for the mother's side, I will be responsible for it. Sparrow said solemnly, obviously already prepared. But yes, in the original anime, Sparrow has a sense of responsibility and mission as the brother of the Charlotte family, has a clear mind, and has superb tactical skills. Acting as a strategist in the Big Mom Pirates, he even dared to risk his life to deceive Big Mom for the sake of the overall situation. So he can totally do this little thing of carrying Big Mom on his back. On the other side, Candy Island, West Coast. Tom, dressed in a suit and with a serious face, was facing the sea, waiting for Jerry quietly. Suddenly, a unique dessert-colored boat came towards us and parked on the shore. Immediately afterwards, 3 tall men walked down. They were the Katakuri triplets who came to see Sparrow. Fur tribe. How can this guy Sparrow have a candy island? Owen shouted while looking at Tom in a suit. At the same time, the 3 of them stood in front of Tom. Tom was not tall, and Katakuri and the other 3 were almost 4 to 5 meters tall, so the 3 of them stood in front of Tom like a wall, waiting. Give way. I'm in a good mood and don't want to argue with the children. Tom raised his eyes and stared at the 3 of them, with a trace of disdain and contempt in his eyes. Child. Ha ha. Dafu's face was cold, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he said in a mocking tone, you just came to Wangwo, right? It seems you don't know your identity yet. What to say to him? Owen had a hot temper and directly activated his fruit ability to heat the air and turn it into a hot wind wrapped around his fist, preparing to teach Tom a lesson. Hot wind fist. Whoops. Tom easily dodged by turning sideways, and the hot wind gently swept across the sea surface, evaporating a lot of seawater. Have you heard anything about it? Katakuri looked at Tom and frowned. My good mood has its limits. Then go die with your good mood. At this time, Dafu couldn't hold back, rubbed his hands, summoned a demon, and then controlled the demon to make strong chops from top to bottom. Phew. Tom flashed through easily again, but his tone had changed. Although it is said that adults should not argue with children, you need to be taught a lesson. Don't be too confident. You'd better use your full strength now. Katakuri spoke at this time, and his arms were as soft as glutinous rice. Owen and Daifuku also activated their abilities. Oh wow. The conversation is right, Tom can pretend again. Oh, you saw me in my prime. Tom didn't even use the Rinnegan, just the eternal Mangekyo. The scarlet pupils reveal a deep and mysterious power that seems to be able to penetrate everything. Katakuri still had the same cold look. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Tom, his expression cold and firm, as if he was full of confidence in his own strength. No. Katakuri's voice was low and powerful, with a hint of disdain. He didn't seem to care about Tom's threat, after all, he had never been defeated. So let's see it. Katakuri's body exuded a powerful aura. Then. You have to hold on until Jerry comes. What do you mean by that? Seeing that Katakuri was a powerful person, he suddenly felt something was wrong. No adult would take action against a child, so. Tom smiled evilly. Immerse yourself in the darkness of Mangekyo. Chapter 179. It should have been perfect. Advertise here. The waves still hit the shore, splashing cheerful waves, as if laughing at the injured and fallen people. Brother Katakuri, why is this? The scarred Owen stared at Katakuri in disbelief, his face full of despair and confusion. He couldn't understand why such a thing happened, and his heart was full of pain and confusion. As his body trembled, Owen finally fell to the ground and lost consciousness. On the other side, Dafu was leaning against a wall, his face as pale as paper and his breath weak. There was blood flowing from the corners of his mouth, and blood dripped down his chin, forming a pool of blood on the ground. He seemed to be on the verge of death. Daifuku, Owen, Katakuri stared blankly at his armed hands and his fallen brothers. No. Looking at the scene in front of him, Katakuri's heart was filled with pain and self-blame. However, suddenly, his eyes became clear and he regained his sanity. Why is this happening? Why? All the madness he had just experienced kept replaying in his mind, making Katakuri feel extremely painful and tortured. Why? Why do I have this kind of domineering power that can predict the future? Katakuri's voice was filled with endless sadness and anger, and his body was trembling slightly. He used the power to protect his family to cause great harm to his family. Katakuri knelt on the ground, tears constantly pouring out and soaking his cheeks, his hands gripping the ground tightly, his nails sinking deeply into the sand that cracked the ground. Feel the pain, understand the pain, in the pain you. Tom's voice was cold, and he looked at Katakuri with cold eyes. Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo turned slowly, with a strange light shining in his eyes. Just when Tom was about to continue playing, Katakuri, who should have been furious, suddenly lost consciousness and fell down. Tom, that's enough. The person who took action was Jerry. He looked at this scene and frowned slightly. No way, who told you to be so slow? Jerry. The corner of Tom's mouth raised, you don't want to fight over this, do you? Jerry. I'm not that bored, and don't we have somewhere to go? Jerry didn't pay much attention to the Katakuri trio. After all, he believed that waiting for Tom was kind, and it must have been these three people who made the first move. Hearing Jerry's words, Tom smiled slightly. He is indeed my faithful friend and lifelong enemy. The main thing is that the group leader said that we can move a little more freely. Besides, we were invited out of politeness, so it would be bad if we didn't go. Jerry took it for granted. Then let's be a little freer. Tom said here. Go to world government. The two said in unison. As Tom and Jerry left, the Katakuri trio were soon discovered by the patrol of Candy Island. Town of Paralan. Perospero looked at Tren with a smile, as if waiting for his response, but Teren's expression was very calm, as if he had no interest in the so-called benefits of the four islands. He said calmly, I don't lack such things as treasure. Hearing these words, Perospero burst into laughter. Cough, cough, cough. So too. He seemed to have expected such a reaction from Tren. After all, at the level of the Tren Adventure Group, wealth was no longer their goal. At this time, Perospero clapped his hands and motioned for the people outside the door to come in. Then, two men came in, holding a box in their hands and carefully placed it on the candy table. Then, they retreated silently. Perospero looked at Tren and chuckled. If you need to take action, I naturally know what is attractive. But because the negotiations cannot show the final bargaining chip, so. With that said, Perospero gently opened the box and revealed the items inside. I saw a pineapple with a unique pattern lying quietly on the red cloth in the box, exuding an attractive color. This pineapple looks very special. Its skin shows a strange pattern, which seems to contain some mysterious power. Teren's eyes were attracted by this pineapple, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Is this a big investment? Perospero. There is no way. After all, it takes someone of your level to take action so that the BIGMOM pirates will not be destabilized by their mother because of the death of a Capone. Perospero smiled and explained. As long as you agree, Perospero is willing to offer this paramesha fruit. No problem. Tren nodded. Capone is also a fruit user anyway, so he can collect 2 more devil fruits at the existence point of combat items that he has not purchased for a long time. Thank you for your great help. Perospero will always remember it in my heart. Perospero stood up and bent down, showing enough face. I don't know why the leader likes this weird-shaped fruit. It's obviously not as good as other people's fried tails. Thor picked up the box reluctantly. Just when the 3 of them were about to leave, the 2 pirates who brought the box in at the beginning suddenly opened the door in a panic. One of the pirates had a pale face and beads of sweat on his forehead. He said in a trembling voice, Lord Perospero. Something bad is going to happen. Perospero was about to lift up his candy cane and turn the 2 of them into candy men. As a result, another pirate who knew Perospero's perfectionist character followed up and said, It's Lord Perospero. We must tell you about this right away. It is a very important matter. Hearing this, Perospero paused, frowned, looked at the 2 panicked pirates displeased, and asked, What on earth happened? You are so panicked. The pirate took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down, but his voice still had a hint of panic. Master Katakuri, Master Owen and Master Daifuku, They fought at the west bank of Paloran town, and Lord Owen and Lord Dafu were seriously injured. Upon hearing this news, Perospero's eyes became sharp and cold. Do you think I'm stupid? Katakuri would never take action against his family, nor would he allow his family to kill each other. Perospero's voice was low and majestic. The 2 pirates lowered their heads, not daring to look directly into Perospero's eyes. Their voices were full of fear. We don't know the specific situation. We only know that there was a conflict between them, and then they started attacking each other. The 3 of them are still lying in the hospital on Candy Island. The expressions of these 2 guys don't look like they are lying. Looking at the frightened expressions of the 2 men, Perospero gritted his teeth and cursed secretly in his heart. He knew very well that Katakuri, Owen and Daifuku were all important members of the family. If there was an internal fight between them, it would have a huge impact on the entire family. Damn it! The perfect deal has ended. Perospero shouted coldly, and then the 2 pirates turned into candy men. Chapter 180 The 12th Partner. Advertise here. No matter which world you are in, you cannot associate honesty with God. Among the demigods of the old world, I was the first to arrive. At that time, I was full of curiosity and desire to explore this new world. I wanted to feel it. However, When I tried to touch those green trees, they broke easily. When I touched the blue icebergs, they melted instantly. Only this vast land selflessly accepted my forging, allowing me to gradually gain the power of the first fire. I once thought this was the Earth's recognition of me, but what followed was endless loneliness and boredom. Later, people always wanted to get various items from me, but they never said thank you. I don't need a so-called partner because I'm used to living alone. However, until that young man appeared in front of me, he changed my view on loneliness and made me understand that as a master craftsman, I should embark on a journey of my own. So, Orn is here. Candy Island, inside a hospital. Why? Perospero stood in the center of the treatment room with a gloomy face. Colorful syrups were flowing on the surrounding walls and floor, and the air was filled with sweet aroma. Perospero's eyes were full of anger and confusion. He glanced at the doctors who had been turned into candy men in the room, and the anger in his heart became more and more intense. Why? Perospero roared angrily, with a hint of despair in his voice. With his own strength, he could easily tell who caused the injuries on Owen and Dafu. The most popular brother in the Charlotte family ranks first on the list. He will protect every member of the Charlotte family, Katakuri, and kill his best brother. So this is why Perospero feels extremely angry and sad. Katakuri, don't you say anything. Perospero turned his head and his eyes fell on Katakuri, who was silent at the side. Katakuri lowered his head and squatted in the corner, like a child who had done something wrong. His face was expressionless, but his eyes revealed deep remorse and helplessness. Perospero's voice echoed in the silent treatment room, carrying questioning and reproach. However, Katakuri remained silent. He seemed not to want to explain anything and could not face Perospero's accusations. Because Tom's existence was completely missing from his memory, only the scene of him beating his brother remained. The entire treatment room fell into a dead silence, with only the sound of Perospero's heavy breathing echoing in the air. Katakuri would actually attack his own brother. That shouldn't be the case. Outside the hospital, Tren was also very confused. Did this little butterfly affect the temperament of some characters in the plot and change drastically? Captain, I don't think so. Thor handed the box containing the devil fruit to the Shadow Legion ninja, and also took a note from their hands. Taking the note from Thor, Tren unfolded it. Captain, Tom and Jerry seem to have left Candy Island. They said they would come back for dinner, so are you coming back for dinner? SpongeBob and Patrick are back. Li Jing. Of course we go back to eat. No, where did Tom and Jerry go? Tren's pupils trembled when he suddenly reacted. What's the problem? I heard that White Bear will make a new dish today, but I don't know if it can be mixed with tail meat. Thor crossed his hands on his chest, looking like he was thinking, not paying attention to Tom and Jerry at all. No, Thor, Tom and Jerry, it's okay, it's okay. Thor pressed his hands hard, and Tren was pressed tightly. Didn't they say they would come back for dinner? It can't be done at all. Those are two Gongwo masters. Speaking of this, Tren also sighed helplessly. At this time, I should do an exciting 3-stroke to relieve my mood. Tren clicked on the system in an instant. But when he looked at the summon button, he suddenly realized something, so he asked curiously, System, can't you only draw solo? After Sale's explanation of the system, we are now in a period of strict crackdown on system style. The name of this system is Summoning System, and not Summoning 10 Link System, so it can only be drawn individually. Close black lens bracket. For a moment, Tren felt as uncomfortable as eating instant noodles without a seasoning packet, or in other words, 3 flavored seasoning packets but only 1 noodle pancake. Rules are dead, but people are alive. System after Sale's explanation. The intelligence of this system does not count as a person. Forget it, the worst thing is to take your time. Tren gritted his teeth and thought to himself. There is no other way anyway, so let's give it a try. Tren took a deep breath, and then slowly pressed the flashing summon button. The moment his fingertips touched the button, a mysterious power surged into his heart, and he felt as if he was connected to another world. Immediately afterwards, the familiar summoning magic circle appeared in front of you, but this time it was different. The magic circle began to slowly grow larger and continued to expand. Teren's eyes widened, looking at the changing magic circle, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of uneasiness in his heart. It can't be Antone. However, fate always seems to like to play tricks. When the magic circle expands to a certain extent, it finally stops expanding. So this time, Tren stared at the magic circle nervously, expecting what would appear inside. A moment later, a huge figure slowly walked out of the magic circle, accompanied by lava sputtering everywhere. Because the current summoned partner has a terrifying figure, considering the current world, the strength of the new world rules has been reduced, suppressing his figure to 10 meters. Close black lens bracket. Name: Orn from League of Legends. Abilities: Forging, Demigod Power. Strength: Honest God. Close black lens bracket. Orn. Tren looked at the creature in front of him. This creature had the features of a goat and a body as huge as a hill. His body was covered with a thick layer of fur, as if it were a natural armor, and there were long hair on his head. With 2 curved horns, it looks particularly majestic. At the same time, the muscles swelled and were full of strength. He held a huge forging hammer in one hand and a sharp axe in the other hand, looking like a master blacksmith. Tren couldn't help but swallowed. Although Orn's body had obviously suppressed him, he still felt an invisible pressure. Alan is nearly 10 meters tall, like a hill, standing there and being impossible to ignore. Captain, Alan is back. Alan's voice was low and powerful, like muffled thunder, as if it came from underground. There is a kind of majesty and solemnity in the tone, giving people a sense of calmness. However, what can be seen is that the corners of Alan's mouth raised slightly, revealing an imperceptible smile. This smile made his originally serious face become gentle, as if he were a loving elder. Chapter 181 The Taciturn Orn. Advertise here. At this time, Perospero and Katakuri slowly walked out of the hospital, their faces solemn and their hearts heavy. Irving and Dafu were seriously injured and are still receiving emergency treatment. Perospero's face was as gloomy as the sky before a storm, and he broke the silence with a cold voice. I won't tell my mother about this, but you must give me a reasonable explanation, Katakuri. His eyes were full of sternness and reproach. However, Katakuri followed Perospero silently without saying a word. There was no expression on his face, only deep silence. This silence makes people feel inexplicably depressed. However, this scene is really weird. According to common sense, with Katakuri's strength and status in the BIGMOM pirates, even Perospero, the eldest son, is not qualified to reprimand him. However, what happened today gave Perospero a sense of joy in his heart. This was the first time he felt the majesty of being the eldest brother. At the same time, this also strengthened his determination. The BIGMOM pirates are a group that only belongs to family. Captain Tren, I made you laugh. Perospero put on a smile as soon as he walked out of the door, and at the same time thought to himself, why does it get dark so fast today? Completely unaware of the huge Orn standing behind the hospital. There are still 3 days until the wedding banquet. Let me take you to see your mother. Perospero said respectfully, leaning on his candy cane. Bang! The moment the two of them stepped out of the hospital door at the same time, a strong pressure suddenly dropped. Is he planning to kill us? Or does he have some other purpose? Did he come here to annex all the countries and declare war on my mother? Perospero, a smart man, looked at the bench sitting in front of him. Tren, with the corners of his mouth raised, went through all his expectations in his mind for a while. Katakuri, on the other hand, felt much more than Perospero because of his powerful haki. This kind of aura is like a natural disaster. No. If there is a god, it must be like this. Katakuri didn't even dare to look back, his body trembling slightly. Open black lens bracket 20% Katakuri close black lens bracket open black lens bracket 15% Perospero close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 255% summon close black lens bracket. Haha, okay, Orn. Tron looked at Perospero, whose thighs were trembling, and smiled. Huh, Alan snorted, looking down at Katakuri and Perospero, and at the same time collected his breath. Ha, ha, ha. As the pressure disappeared, Perospero swallowed and gasped, and Katakuri did the same. Orn has just arrived. You won't mind, right? Tren said with a half smile. Orn. Perospero was stunned for a moment when he heard the name from Trent's mouth. He had identified all the people before Trent's adventure group came, but there was no one named Orn. Thinking of this, Perospero plucked up the courage to turn his head, and suddenly the huge and red Orn came into view. It is known that Anti is over 8 meters tall, so the 10-meter tall Alan is much taller than Anti, giving people a strong sense of oppression. What race is this? A race of giants. It doesn't look like it. Looking at Alan in front of him, as the nation with the most races, Perospero couldn't help but feel confused. He tried to recall the various races he had seen, but he still could not determine which race Orn belonged to. And how did this guy appear on Candy Island? How could he hide such a huge height? Perospero muttered secretly in his heart. However, despite his curiosity and doubts about Orn, he remained polite and extended a friendly hand to Orn. Because judging from Tren's tone, they seemed to be companions. Hello, I am Charlotte Perospero, my mother's eldest son. Perospero said with a smile. However, when Orn faced Perospero's greetings, he did not react at all. He just stood there quietly, as if completely ignoring Perospero's stretched out hand. Perospero felt a little embarrassed. His hands were frozen in the air for a while, not knowing how to continue. At this moment, a breeze blew by, gently brushing Perospero's cheek. Alan, I don't want to care about you. Suddenly, a crisp voice came. It turned out to be Thor sitting on Orn's shoulder. She was swaying her little feet and eating the snacks in her hands with relish. She looked at Perospero with a smile, seeming amused by his awkward situation. As that's so, Perospero was amused by Thor's words, and he realized that what he had just done was a bit reckless. It seems I was abrupt, sorry. Perospero gently put down his hand, with a helpless smile on his face. Let's go. Didn't you say you were going to take us to Cake Island? Tren stood up and walked to Perospero and Katakuri. Perospero was okay, he still looked respectful, and led Tren and the 3 people towards the port. But Katakuri frowned, because he regained some consciousness when Daifuku arrived at the hospital, and held his hand, muttering, the word blue cat. Blue cat, Katakuri muttered. ... Candy Island. Port, a boat decorated with desserts stopped here early. Tren looked at the ship prepared by Perospero, with a hint of dissatisfaction on his face and frowned. Is this the ship that lets me take the ship to all nations? Perospero quickly explained. Captain Tren, please understand that my mother's tea party, wedding banquet and other events are very important, and all the forces that are invited are arranged in this way. Seeing this, Tren looked at Orn and Thor, as well as the two summoning opportunities of the system, and thought to himself, I just went to Cake Island to try my luck. But on the surface, he still pretended to be helpless and sighed. Well, in that case, we can only do as the Romans do. Perospero finally breathed a sigh of relief when Thrawn agreed. He warmly invited Tren and others to board the ship and began to greet the crew to set sail. However, when he saw Owen, he suddenly hesitated and asked tentatively, Do you want me to find a bigger ship? Owen glanced at him coldly and said nothing. I saw Owen slowly taking steps, gradually shrinking his body to about 5 meters, and then steadily walked onto the ship. After boarding the deck, Orn turned his eyes to Perospero, with a mocking look in his eyes, seeming to tell him. Never underestimate the power of a demigod. Chapter 182 CP's Imagination. Advertise here. The distance between Candy Island and Cake Island is actually not as far as imagined. Just when Tren and Perospero's ship was sailing towards Cake Island. On the other side, above the sea, there was an extremely huge Susanata spreading his wings and flying across the sky like a soaring giant eagle. If you choose to take a boat from Candy Island to the holy land of Mary Joya, the speed will definitely be excruciatingly slow, and it will be almost impossible to reach it in less than 2 months. But for this behemoth with the ability to fly, this is not a problem. However, with such a huge Susan flying through the air, it was almost impossible to conceal its whereabouts. Members of the CP organization on the islands they passed along the way noticed this amazing existence and reported it to their superiors. Marie Joya, CP. The atmosphere within the spy agency is tense and serious. That's right. What we saw on Stoy Island was the bounty totaling 4.9 billion Baileys, the double bonus sticks of the Tren Adventure Group. Tom and Jerry. They left the Black Pearl and are now heading in the direction of Mary Joa. A phone bug with the number 8 written on it shouted with an exaggerated expression. Stuya Island is an unknown number of miles away from Bigmom where the Tren Adventure Group appeared. How could they appear there? They are not sailing, they are flying. But they are going very fast. As soon as the words came out, all the CP staff present were stunned. What are they doing here at Mariajoya right now? CP's spy team leader frowned, filled with doubts and uneasiness. Then he raised his eyes and looked sharply at the member on the left. Have the people over at Candy Island not responded yet? The team leader's tone was low, with a hint of anxiety. Upon hearing the team leader's inquiry, the CP team members responsible for liaison quickly checked the communication equipment, but the results disappointed them. Reporting to the team leader, we have not yet received a reply from Candy Island. After hearing this, the team leader's face became more and more gloomy. As the leader of the spy team, of course he knew about the news of recruiting Tom and Jerry. But now there is no response from the people on Candy Island, but Tom and Jerry are coming towards Marie Joa, with unknown intentions. This means there may be unexpected trouble. But at this time, Candy Island's silence made the situation even more confusing. Continue to contact and make sure to understand their intentions. At the same time, strengthen the monitoring of the sea areas around Mariajoya and not let go of any clues. The team leader issued the order decisively, with firm and decisive eyes. The CP espionage organization must take immediate action to deal with possible crises. Is it possible that they accepted the conditions? That's why they flew to Mary Joya in such a hurry. While everyone was running and busy, a smart Watson discovered a blind spot and suddenly said. This sentence stunned everyone, and everyone stared at the person who spoke. Keep talking. The CP team leader said calmly. Judging from the timeline, Tom and Jerry were the first to have internal strife, but it was just 2 people fighting. However, a few days later, almost all of the 2 sides started a battle on an unnamed island, and even the entire island was destroyed. But then, as usual, they sailed to the world of the Bigmom pirates. These signs are enough to prove that the Tron Adventure Group has split into 2 factions because of Tom and Jerry's attitudes. While there may be differences between them, it doesn't come to the point of outright betrayal. At this time, Tom and Jerry made a decisive decision to rebel through the excellent negotiations of our CP organization. But in order to prevent being discovered by Jenny Tron and others, they hurried to Mary Joa. Don't forget, in the last island war, there was no winner between the 2 sides. This is enough to show that once the rest of the Tren Adventure Group unite, Tom and Jerry have no guarantee of victory. Quote. So there is only one truth, said the CP member with a Conan look on his face. They are running towards Mariajoya. And they are eager to fall into the arms of the world government. Damn, he said a lot and made sense. The CP member on the other side smacked his lips. How do you say? The CP team leader slowly raised his eyes. Are they here to seek refuge with us? Of course, you can't come all the way here just to fight with the world government, right? No one would be that boring. On the other side, the sea breeze roared by, and the huge and majestic Susano stretched out its huge wings. In the gem above his head, Tom looked at the faint red earth continent in front of him, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and his eyes flashed with excitement. Last time I heard Big Wolf talking about a night attack on Marine headquarters and so on. And this so-called world government sounds superior to Marine headquarters. I, Tom, have never been weaker than others in my life. Ha 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 ha. Tom's laughter echoed in the air. Looking at Tom, who was laughing wildly at Uchiha again, Jerry shook his head helplessly and sighed softly. I don't know if the leader will blame us. His eyes were cast into the distance, and a trace of worry and uneasiness surged in his heart. At the same time, on the desert boat, Tren suddenly sneezed, rubbed his nose, and said to himself, strange, I won't catch a cold, right? Just when Tren frowned in confusion, trying to find the reason, a huge furry hand stretched out and gently held Tren into his arms, and at the same time a warm breath hit his face. Orn. Tren raised his head and saw Orn's gentle eyes, with a smile on his face. Alan looked at Tren quietly without saying a word, but the concern in his eyes made Tren feel extremely reassured. Thank you, Tren said softly, and then leaned next to Alan, feeling the warmth. What's the deal between you and Terran's group? Katakuri stared at Perospero, his eyes flashing with a sharp light, as if he could see through his mind. At this time, Katakuri had regained some energy, and his voice had a hint of majesty. After Perospero was silent for a moment, he slowly said, for everyone's good conditions. His eyes fell on the cake island in front of him, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a mysterious smile. Katakuri frowned, as if he was not satisfied with Perospero's answer. Mom's decision will not be changed easily. He knew very well that his mother, Charlotte Linlin, was stubborn and determined. Once she made a decision, it would be difficult to change it. Perospero shook his head slightly, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. That's why I won't let my mother continue. When Tren and his gang take action, my mother can only give up. During this time, I will personally advise my mother. This is our pirate group and there is no room for outsiders. After saying that, Perospero ignored Katakuri and walked towards the deck with a cane. His steps were steady and powerful, as if every step carried a firm belief in his heart. At the same time, his face is filled with a confident smile, making people feel his optimism for the future. Standing on the deck, Perospero took a deep breath and shouted with enthusiasm and respect. Captain Tren, the Cake Island has arrived. Mom is already looking forward to meeting you. Chapter 183 13th Partner. Advertise here. Your thoughts are like this pool of water, my friend. It is difficult to be clear and clear when touched by the outside world, but if you let it calm down, the answer suddenly becomes clear. The same goes for Kung Fu. Just like no one believed that a panda could become Dragon Warrior. Cake Island, one of the four emperors, Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin's station in New World, the entire island looks like a multi-layered cake. But if you look carefully, you will find that there are many transport ships coming in and out of many ports on Cake Island. There are even many world-famous pastry chefs on these ships. The island really lives up to its name. Tren sighed as he stepped off the boat. At the same time, Perospero also turned around and said, Captain Tren, you can do it yourself. I'm going to inform my mother. After saying that, Perospero and Katakuri turned and left. There are indeed no other pirate ships here, Thor said, looking at the import and export ships in the port. Give way, you bastard, how dare you disobey the Godfather's order? Along with an angry shout, there was a commotion in the crowd. Immediately afterwards, a group of people dressed in mafia costumes rushed over. They roughly pushed aside the surrounding crowd and opened up a path. And walking in the center of the team was the short man wearing a hat, scarf, straight striped suit, and a cigar in his mouth, Capone Becky. His appearance is exactly the same as that of the mafia, which makes people feel fearful. Godfather. This group of pirates, who were like the mafia, shouted in unison, and the sound resounded throughout the street. They were in awe of the Godfather and seemed willing to do anything for him. Capone Becky stared at the guy who was pressed on the ground coldly, with a kind of majesty in his eyes. He slowly exhaled a puff of rich cigar smoke and asked in a calm tone, why don't you listen to me? One of the supernovas, captain of the flame tank pirates, gangster, Capone Becky, Paramesha, Fortress Fruit ability user, bounty, 564 million Baileys. I was wrong, spare me, Godfather. The suppressed man cried. If there is a chance to forgive, then people will just keep making mistakes. Capone Becky looked at one of his subordinates, spit out the cigar and stamped it out with his foot, and then took out a pistol from his arms. With the sound of a gunshot, Capone and Becky took out a white cloth and wiped the pistol, then threw the cloth out, just enough to cover the face of the corpse. Have you joined the BIGMOM pirates? Capone. At this time, a joking female voice came, and there was a girl with long straight pink hair and a golden semicircle under the right eye. Wearing denim suspender shorts, a white half-sleeved shirt, and brown long-heeled boots, a woman with a hot figure, heart-shaped lipstick, and a hand holding something similar to a pizza walked out of the crowd. Hearing the sound, Capone and Becky turned his head. When he saw the face of the visitor, he was stunned, but soon returned to normal and said calmly, the sea now is like a hungry beast, it is too dangerous, isn't it? Joey Bonnie. Ha ha ha. Bonnie took a bite of the food on his hand. The cheese was as stringy as noodles. It's really hard for everyone after the war. One of the supernovas, captain of the Bonnie Pirates, Big Eater, Chow Eiley. Bonnie, Paramesha, person with the ability of the Sway Sway fruit, bounty, 510 million Baileys. I didn't expect you to be alive. Capone, Becky said calmly. After all, according to his information network, shortly after the war on the top, the Bonnie Pirates were defeated by the Blackbeard Pirates in exchange for the escaped warships. Later, he was arrested by Marine General Akainu. It can be said that Bonnie's pirate group has been destroyed. Unexpectedly, she managed to escape and now appears in Anti-New World's territory. After all, I am also called extremely evil, along with you. I am not weak. Bonnie blinked. Two supernovae, interesting. At this time, Tren spoke, with a hint of joking in his voice. At the same time, Orn and Thor, who was sitting on Orn's shoulders, came out of the shadows. Orn's figure is tall and majestic, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Jenny Tren. Bigmom actually invited this guy. Compared to Bonnie, Tren's appearance directly caused Capone Becky's face to change drastically, and he even lost his facial management. His eyes widened with disbelief on his face. Look at Tren. Jenny Tren. Bonnie couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. She stared at the man in front of her who was wearing a trench coat and had a knife on his waist. Terran's slightly long hair was fluttering in the wind, and he had a bold and unrestrained smile on his face, as if he didn't care about everything around him. However, Bonnie's eyes became blurred, as if he was calculating something. Terran didn't stay too long. He walked straight ahead until he reached the second layer of the big cake in the center of the cake island, where Bigmom was located. Along the way, no one dared to stop him, and everyone silently watched his leaving figure. Captain, let's come here. Thor started to speak, but was interrupted loudly by Tren. That's right. This is the Feng Shui treasure land. Oh, it's starting. Looking at Tren's arrogant look, Thor helplessly covered his face. Terran clicked on the system interface without any hesitation and quickly clicked the summon button. Come on. Second summons today. The appearance of the magic circle this time was unremarkable and fleeting. Wait, it's gone in a flash. Before Tren could react, he heard a voice from the sky. Oh, Captain. The dragon warrior is here. Then a fat black and white panda with a tuft of hair on his head, holding a stick in his hand, wearing no shirt and a pair of burlap pants with patches in various colors fell from the sky. Name: Dragon Warrior Po, from Kung Fu Panda. Abilities: Dragon Power, Martial Arts Genius, Extremely High Understanding, you can know it at a glance, Grandmaster Tai Chi and other martial arts. Strength: Kung Fu Master, Dragon Warrior. Close black lens bracket. Abao. Tren was stunned for a moment. Captain, Commander, daughter here. You. Abao's voice echoed in the air, but every word was not shouted yet. After that, it hit the top of the cake island directly. He jumped down layer by layer like a pinball, experiencing the entire cake island like a ladder from top to bottom. Finally, Abao rolled down in front of Tren, raised his finger, and said feebly, "Long time no see." After saying that, he fell to the ground and fell unconscious. Terran looked at the embarrassed Abao in front of him and shook his head helplessly. It always feels like another unreliable guy is here. Chapter 184 Chatty Abao. Advertise here. Although Po fell on the top floor of the cake island, it obviously did not hit the house where Andy lived, so Andy only heard a moderately loud noise in her ears. Mom, is there popcorn again today? At the same time, a burst of magical laughter came from the dessert palace on the top of the cake island. In this room with pink and white tones, a man with a height of 880 centimeters is unexpectedly large and fat. Charlotte Linlin, who had long curly pink hair, thick lipstick and light purple eyeshadow, wore a pirate hat and a large pink dress, smiled with her mouth open. At this time, Napoleon, who was wearing it on his head, opened his eyes and said, "This sound doesn't seem to be popcorn, Linlin." Indeed. Prometheus, who looked like the sun, replied lazily. What could that be? I'm very curious. Zeus floated to Prometheus, blinked, showing an expectant look. I'm really looking forward to the wedding cake. The ant ignored the three guys she created, but said to herself and licked her lips, time flies so slowly. Mom. At this moment, a voice came from the door, and Perospero and Katakuri walked in together. Perospero, Katakuri. Looking at her two sons, the ant frowned, but still had a smile on her face, and asked kindly, "Why did you come to see me? Is it because the wedding banquet is about to start early?" Hearing what his aunt said, Perospero smiled slightly, and then replied softly, "No, Mom, there are still 3 days before the wedding banquet. In fact, I came here this time to tell you something important." As he spoke, he paused, and then his tone became serious. Jenny Tren is here. Quote. When the ant heard this name, she looked stunned, then her eyes narrowed slightly, an imperceptible smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, and then she burst out laughing. Mom, is this guy really here? Her laughter echoed in the room, making people feel a chill. Perospero nodded, waggled his long tongue, held the candy cane, and explained to his aunt. Yes, Mom, he has arrived at the Cake Island. Moreover, he did not give us any difficulties. His ship also docked at Candy Island, accompanied only by the dragon servant Thor and another unknown guy. After speaking, he glanced at the ant and waited for her instructions. Perospero, You did a great job. The aunt looked at her eldest son and praised him without hesitation. This is the mother we should be. Perospero lowered his eyes and smiled. Tell Jenny Tren that I will prepare and let him come to the hall. The aunt said, then pointed to Katakuri and asked. Is Smoothie at Cake Island? Where are Owen, Dafu and the others? Didn't I say that you need to arrive before the wedding banquet? Mom. Faced with his mother's question, Katakuri was speechless for a moment. He couldn't say that his two brothers couldn't get out of bed after being beaten by him, right? Did something happen? Katakuri. The aunt looked cold and stared at Katakuri closely, with a cold light shining in her eyes. Katakuri felt tremendous pressure, but he still remained calm. Mom, Smoothie arrived yesterday and is resting in her room on the third floor of Cake Island. Perospero directly intervened to rescue Katakuri at the critical moment, his voice was calm and firm. As for Owen and Dafu, they still have some important things to deal with on Crunchy Island and Baked Snack Island, so they can't come right away. But please believe in our ability, everything is under control. And Mom, you also know that only by using the best ingredients can you make the most delicious wedding cake. Perospero knew his mother very well, and he cleverly used her love of food to change the subject. Sure enough, when the aunt heard that the wedding cake would be more delicious, a smile of anticipation appeared on her face, and her mood instantly became happy. For a moment, she seemed to have forgotten the unpleasantness just now, and waved her hand to Katakuri. Then go and call Smoothie, and then the three of you will accompany me to meet Jenny Tren. I got it, Mom. Perospero and Katakuri nodded at the same time, indicating that they obeyed. After her two sons left, Charlotte Linlin got up and walked towards the room. Jenny Tren. Mom. On the other side, outside the second floor of Cake Island, Abao was swinging his chubby body crazily, waving his little fists, making sounds from time to time, and even doing a decent roundhouse kick. Taren and Thor on the side saw this scene, with black lines on their faces. Captain, what is our action this time? Defeat the evil Qinglong or the evil Fatty. As long as you nod, Abao is bound to do it. Ada, Abao said while making strange movements. Just as Tren was about to say something, Abao quickly ran up to him and stretched out a finger to signal him to stop talking. Shush. Then, Abao showed a look of realization and said, I understand, Captain. Then, Abao smiled confidently and continued, this is a latent operation full of dangers, no wonder no one else is here. Captain, don't worry, as long as Abao, am here, I will definitely protect you. After saying that, Abao lay on the ground, imitating the appearance of a caterpillar, and slowly crawled forward. However, at this moment, Thor grabbed Poe's ears and lifted him up. Poe, please be quiet, okay. Thor looked at the fat panda with a smile on his face. Sister Thor. Abao looked a little embarrassed, scratched his head and smiled. Sister Thor, you can't test me. When Thor let go, Abao instantly became alert, because I am the Dragon Warrior. The Dragon Warrior will not be afraid of any threats or difficulties. Owen stood quietly, and suddenly exhaled a hot breath from his nostrils. It was obvious that Abao was really talkative. Owen slowly laid the forging hammer in his hand horizontally on the ground, then casually broke off a thick stone pillar from the side and placed it steadily in front of him. Then, he quickly picked up another forging axe and raised it high. As clear and powerful knocking sounds were heard, Orn's movements became more skillful and focused. He swung the forging axe vigorously, and every blow carried endless power, as if he wanted to include the entire world in it. Under his living forging, the originally ordinary stone pillar gradually changed, becoming slender and tough, and unique flame patterns emerged. These flame patterns dance like flames, exuding a mysterious and powerful aura. After a while, after Owen's careful craftsmanship, the pillar had completely changed its appearance and turned into a slender stick with flame patterns. Owen nodded with satisfaction, seeming to be very proud of his work. He handed the flame pattern stick to Thor without hesitation, with a firm and confident look in his eyes, as if to tell him, don't worry, it won't break. Chapter 185 Charlotte Linlin. Advertise here. When Perospero came here alone and found Tron, he was stunned by the sight in front of him. I saw the huge Orn standing quietly behind Tren, Thor holding a stick and beating a fat black and white bear crazily, while Tren was directing from the side with a face full of excitement. Captain Tron. Perospero subconsciously shouted softly. Hearing Perospero's voice, Taren and the other four were stunned. Abao was the first to react and laughed loudly. Haha, Sister Thor is indeed very powerful, and I have no power to fight back. This is really not to be underestimated. After saying that, he even deliberately patted Thor on the shoulder. Thor subconsciously twitched again, and Abao jumped twice in pain, holding his buttocks. At this time, Perospero came forward, looked at Abao with a smile and asked, who is this? Tren replied calmly. My partner, Abao. Another crew member who is not on the list. After hearing Tren's introduction, Perospero couldn't help but feel an uproar in his heart. First there was Orn, who was as big as a giant, and now a fat bear appeared. Before that, they knew nothing about it, it was like appearing out of thin air. No wonder he agreed to dock his ship at Candy Island. It turns out that my mother's territory has been riddled with holes by them. It's really scary. Jenny Tren. Thinking of this, Perospero took a deep look at Tren. Open black lens bracket 5% Perospero close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 160% summon close black lens bracket. Psychic emotions. Looking at the system prompts, Tren couldn't help but be stunned. It's still 5%, wait. He wouldn't see the scene where Thor slapped Poe and think I. Perospero, just now. Tren was about to explain, but Perospero came up to him with a smile on his face. At the same time, he thought to himself, I can't let him know that I am smart. I have already figured it out, so I have to pretend. Thinking of this, Perospero decisively changed the subject and spoke. Captain Tren, I understand. Strong people all have some hobbies. Mom likes to eat sweets, Kaido likes to commit suicide, and Red Hair wants to save face. These are all normal. After speaking, Perospero raised his eyebrows and secretly said, past. This guy really misunderstood. Hearing this sentence, Tren had no choice but to smile. Okay, Mom is already waiting for us in the lobby, let's go there now. Perospero returned to the topic. Lead the way. Tren nodded. Is our mission about to begin this time? Seeing Tren start to move, Abao shook the stick with the Kionwei staff in his hand and stared at Thor with excitement and asked in a low voice. Looking at Abao, a talkative man, Thor looked at the taciturn Orn and smiled. Orn. A bad premonition. ONN, I can eat 38 red bean paste buns in one sitting, isn't that impressive? Quote. Orn, do you know how I became the Dragon Warrior? Okay, if you don't speak, I'll treat it as if you want to listen. This starts with a conference. In this way, Poe's mouth never stopped, and Orn's mouth never opened. Cake Island, top floor. As one of the 4 emperors, the center of the BIGMOM pirate group is stationed on the island. Charlotte, Linlin's desert city is without exception luxurious. It can be said that it occupies almost the top floor of the entire Cake Island. Mom is waiting in the lobby. Perospero led the 4 of them towards the desert castle. Fortunately, the ant was tall, so Orn did not have many restrictions on entering the desert castle. As Tren passed through the 2 doors, he came to the reception hall, with luxurious ceiling lights above his head. He saw many chess players wearing plaid robes, gray trousers, white gloves and boots standing on the left and right sides of the hall. These soldiers are the basic military force of all nations, and they are composed of Homit's soldiers with the theme of white chess pieces. And right in front of him, a fat, tall woman was sitting on a chair, staring at him with a big mouth. On the left and right sides stood Katakuri and a woman. The woman was brown-skinned and tall, with blue eyes, thick lips, and lavender lipstick. She has long silver-white wavy hair with bangs covering her right eye. She wears a white round hood, a yellow scarf, a pink striped bodysuit, and a pair of gloves. There is a rose tattoo on his right leg, and he is wearing a pair of pink patterned boots, and his eyes are staring at himself at this time. He is Jenny Tron, who jumped into the war and triggered the Second War, killing Pluten Rayleigh and the red-haired Shanks. And the guy who caused Marine to join New World. One of the 3 desert commanders of the Big Mom Pirates, Juice Minister Charlotte Smoothie, Paramesha. A person with the ability to squeeze fruits, with a bounty of 932 million Baileys. Smoothie looked at the man in front of him and couldn't help but think to himself. Mom, the guests are here. Perospero bowed respectfully, then walked quickly to stand next to Katakuri and stopped talking. Tren and Ant looked at each other and both spoke at the same time. Jenny Thrawn. Charlotte Linlin. Mom. The ant laughed heartily, and the laughter was so deafening that people couldn't help but cover their ears. She stood up and opened her arms, as if she wanted to give Tren a hug, but she suddenly stopped and her eyes fell on Orn behind Tren. Orn is tall and mighty, with a body as majestic as a hill. He exudes a powerful aura that cannot be ignored. The ant stared at him for a while, then exclaimed, tall and strong. Could this be the descendant of the giant race and the fur race? It's really amazing. There was a curious light in her eyes, and she seemed to have a strong interest in this new race. Big Mom longs for a utopia where all races and species can coexist harmoniously. Humans, fishmen, mermaids, furs, snakeheads, long hands, long legs, little humans, 3-eyed people, and several different races of mixed race. It can be said that as long as there are races in the pirate world, Andy has them. In addition to the giants, Lunaria and an unknown race, the comics have not been published yet. So Auntie is eager, especially for the giants. Because her dream is to establish a country where all races and things in the world can live together regardless of height. She hopes that all races in the world will become family, and become as big as her, so that they can sit around the dinner table as equals. Dine next to. However, because of the serious damage caused to the giant village by Cece, the giants hated Auntie, and Auntie's kingdom lacked people of the same size who could drink tea and eat desserts with her at the tea party. And Owen was standing in front of Auntie like this, and Auntie's eyes were straight for a moment. Chapter 186 History Text. Advertise here. Mom. Perospero looked at this scene and felt numb for a moment. As the eldest son, he knew very well what his mother's expression meant. Giants. Almost all adult giants are about 12 meters tall, and Owen is more than 10 meters tall, more than 1 meter taller than Big Mom, so in the eyes of others, Owen does belong to the giants. This category. I saw the ant walking up to Orn step by step, raising her eyes and staring at Orn closely. Are you a giant? Quote. Alan frowned and looked at the ant, still saying nothing. Hey, why don't you speak? Auntie looked at the silent Alan and asked again. Alan wanted to remain silent, but his next words made him widen his eyes. I saw the ant suddenly reached out and took Alan's right hand and said, My name is Charlotte Linlin, are you interested in being my 44th husband? Tren, who never expected the result. Omega backquote. Thor's eyes flashed with anticipation. Proposal scene. Wow. Poe, who was standing next to Alan, pushed his elbow against Alan excitedly, and kept repeating, Alan, what is this called? It's destiny. Girls are like this. If you take such initiative, this is yours. Lucky. Before Poe could finish his words, he was slapped away by Alan with his left hand, leaving only an echo. After dealing with Abao, Alan stared at Charlotte Linlin standing in front of him with a serious face, thinking secretly how to deal with this situation. Originally he didn't want to say anything, but now he had to speak. I saw Alan take a deep breath, and a voice as heavy as thunder came from his throat. My name is Alan, and I like to be alone. Except for everyone on the ship, I don't like other people. I don't know who you are, no one cares. Mom. After hearing Alan's words, Charlotte Linlin's eyes narrowed slightly, and the atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. She first glanced at Tren, then moved her gaze to Thor and Abao who had just crawled back, and finally returned to Orn. Mom. Andy laughed, then walked back to her seat and turned her attention to Tren again. If possible, I really hope to have a child with your partner. Jenny Tren. The ant looked at Tren aside, with a trace of desire and expectation in her eyes. Haha, this can't be possible. Tren sat on a chair in the hall and couldn't help laughing. After all, you shouldn't be able to have children at your age, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get married. His tone was a bit playful and ridiculing. It's really rude. Hearing Tren's words, Smoothie couldn't help snorting and turned his head away with some displeasure. She really couldn't stand Tren's rudeness, but she had no choice, because as long as she stared at Tren for less than 20 seconds, she could feel a strong murderous aura coming towards her face. It's just to let everyone live in harmony. It just so happens that my daughter is also getting married. The ant completely ignored Tren's rudeness. Instead, she grabbed the cake on the table and took a bite. Then she paused and continued, You should have it. What? Tren frowned. The historical text of red-haired Shanks. Huh. As soon as Andy said this, Tren was stunned. His eyes widened and his face was full of disbelief. Yes, he was really confused. He had never thought about such things as historical texts, nor had he even collected them. No need to pretend, Shanks must have a piece too, and that piece is with you now. Auntie's eyes were fixed on Tren, with a cunning light shining in her eyes. To tell you the truth, I really don't have that kind of thing. After all, I don't have much interest in that thing. Tren sighed and said honestly, after all, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But the ant sneered, Don't be ridiculous, Shanks and Pluden Rayleigh were killed by you in Marineland. No one will believe the joke that you don't have a historical text on your body. Quote. I did kill the two of them, but I did not take the so-called historical text. Tren waved his hand and said. However, for Auntie, Tren's frankness was interpreted as having another meaning. The corners of the ant's mouth raised slightly, revealing a sly smile. I know what you are worried about, don't worry. Inviting you to the wedding this time is just a pretense. If you are willing, we can exchange rubbings of historical texts with each other. Ha. Hearing this, Tren couldn't help laughing. He stood up and looked firmly at the ant who was as beautiful as a flower when she was 20 years old. I said that I had no interest in that thing from the beginning, and I didn't collect it. The ant didn't seem to be planning to give up. She was about to continue persuading Tren, but at this moment, she met Tren's cold and piercing eyes. Charlotte Linlin, if I am really interested in these things, do you think the Cake Island, where one of the historical texts is stored, will still exist intact? Terran's voice was cold and determined, as if a cold wind was blowing through her, making the ant shiver. At this moment, Parosparrow, Katakuri and Smoothie all had cold sweat on their foreheads. Especially Parosparrow. Countless battle ideas flashed through his mind, but the result was without exception, the Big Mom pirates would be wiped out. If there is no absolute certainty to kill Jenny Tren instantly, no matter how you take action, it will be an extremely stupid decision. Not to mention the dragon servant Thor who once defeated Beckman, the vice captain of the red-haired pirates, with 3 punches. The fact that Orn and the guy named Poe were not recorded is a huge variable. What's more, the Black Pearl of the Tron Adventure Group is now docked in the Candy Island harbor, and the group of people on the ship are truly terrifying. Therefore, it is obviously an extremely unwise choice to have a conflict with the Tren Adventure Group. Ah, Mom, that's it for today. Isn't there a dessert party in the afternoon? Many guests have already arrived. Parosparrow risked being killed by his own mother and stood up resolutely, successfully breaking the tense situation. Parosparrow. Charlotte Linlin's eyes flashed with a different emotion, then looked at Tren, and finally returned to normal. She looked at her eldest son, raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and showed a seemingly kind smile. You are right. There will be a dessert party in the afternoon. Mom. As the ant's laughter fell, the surrounding atmosphere gradually became more relaxed. Parosparrow, Katakuri and Smoothie seemed to be relieved, because they knew that Charlotte Linlin had come out of the mood swing just now. But what's more, it's fear, especially the death threat brought by the 4 Tren people that fills my heart. Chapter 187 Dessert Banquet. Advertise here. The ant was the first to relent, and Perospero finally breathed a sigh of relief, but soon became nervous again. He quickly walked up to Tren and said respectfully, Captain Tren, my mother has thinking disorder, so. Taren interrupted. Perospero, this excuse won't work next time. Perospero quickly nodded in agreement, but secretly muttered in his heart, this guy Tren is really getting more and more difficult to deal with. But Taren seemed to see through his mind and said with a smile, Perospero, last time I said I wanted to kill Linlin, this can be a joke, or it can become a reality, it depends on how you do it. After speaking, Taren patted Perospero on the shoulder, turned and left. Didn't you say there was a dessert banquet? I just happened to be a little hungry. Let's go try it and see if the desserts made by these world-famous pastry chefs are really more delicious than those made by White Bear. Looking at the backs of Taren and the other 3 people leaving, Perospero was stunned, and his mind kept echoing what Taren had just said. Perospero. At this time, Katakuri stepped forward and patted his shoulder gently, waking him up from his meditation. What's the matter? Perospero glanced sideways at Katakuri. His tone was not very good. It was obvious that he had not forgiven Katakuri for his attack on his brother. Faced with Perospero's tone, Katakuri didn't pay much attention, but told him what he was curious about when he was on the ship. After all, Daifuku had been grabbing his hand and shouting this name when he woke up, so Katakuri felt that his attack on Daifuku and Owen for no reason must have something to do with this, blue cat. Is there anyone in the Tren adventure group who looks like a blue cat? Blue cat. Perospero frowned after hearing Katakuri's words. That's right. Katakuri stared at Perospero, anticipating his next words. From what I know about the Tren adventure group, there is indeed such a guy. The bounty of 4.9 billion Baileys is the red-flowered pair of Tom and Jerry, and the one named Tom is a blue cat. Wait a minute. Perospero noticed. Kataku Lee's expression suddenly burst into laughter. You don't think it was the guy named Tom who caused you to hurt Dafu and Owen, right? Katakuri nodded and said with a serious smile. I lost a memory after I woke up, and before Dafu lost consciousness, he kept chanting this name to me. I think it must be related to it. Ha ha ha, Katakuri. Perospero laughed lowly, then his face turned cold. This is just Dafu's excuse to prevent you from being charged with hurting your brother. Can't you hear it? But, Katakuri wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Perospero. But what? Who is that guy Tom? Enter Marinabando, that's the guy who suppressed the Warring States period of Buddha. Who is Buddha's Warring States period? The former Marine Admiral who chased Roger and the Golden Lion with Garp back then is now Marine Fleet Admiral. If it was really Tom from the Tron Adventure group who did it, do you think the 2 of them can be lying in the hospital and you can stand and talk to me? Perospero said in a stern tone. As he spoke, Perospero tapped his candy cane, walked to the gate, looked at the scenery of Cake Island from the top, and continued, Katakuri, you are the most powerful in the family. If you face same question, do you think you will hold back? Katakuri remained silent, but he was thinking about Perospero's words. He knew what Perospero said made sense. If Tom really took action, Dafu and Irving couldn't just be injured. But he still couldn't let go, because Dafu kept chanting Tom's name before losing consciousness. Okay, Katakuri. Perospero turned around and patted Katakuri on the shoulder. Don't think too much, Dafu and Owen will be fine. What we need to do now is prepare ourselves for what may happen next. After all, Tren Adventure Group is too dangerous. Quote. Yes. Katakuri nodded, took a deep breath, and temporarily put aside the doubts in his heart. The 2 of them. At this time, Smoothie, a pair of long-legged people behind the door, obviously listened to what he just said. Brother Katakuri, how could you hurt your family? 4-layer Cake Island, dessert banquet. At this time, almost all the people invited by the ant arrived at the Cake Island and gathered at the dessert banquet. For example, among the 6 kings of the underground world, Morgans is known as Big News, and is also the president of the World Economic News Agency. Known as the Deep Ocean Current, Umit controls shipping and can be said to be the monopoly of commodity trading channels on the ocean. Known as the Queen of Happy Street, she is also an agent of CP0, a secret intelligence agency directly under the Draconians, and a double agent of Vegapunk's spy, Stussy. And Drago Pyrecrow, who looks strong, has hair like a lion's mane, wears a clown-like mask, and holds a Shinigami sickle, is known as the Big Name Funeral Company. At this time, coupled with the supernova Capone Becky and the unknown Joel Bonnie, it can be said that while the banquet was bustling with excitement, there was also a lot of intrigue underneath. Hey, did Big Mom really invite this guy? Morgans, who was holding a wine glass, looked at Taren, who was walking towards the banquet, in disbelief. It looks like there is another secret conspiracy incident. It's so exciting. Womit smiled. It was obvious that no matter how many or too few pirates, they couldn't interfere with his shipping business. It's called Big News, but you don't even know about it. How sad. Morgans. Stussy has short blonde curly hair, blue eyes, and lipstick. She has an elegant appearance and good looks. Wearing a white flowered hat, a pink dress and a white shawl, and blue high heels decorated with bows. She took a sip of red wine and sneered. You guys are really boring. Can't you just enjoy this rare gathering? Dorag Picro shook his head helplessly and drank the wine in his hand. I think it's because Buggy the Clown and Buggy's big pirate group are quite popular recently, so I don't pay much attention to Tren and his gang. Morgan explained calmly, and then changed the subject. After all, that guy Buggy the Clown gained considerable power in the battle at the top. The world government is already preparing to recruit this guy as a Shichibukai. Quote. A war on top has changed the world so much, and the culprit is currently eating desserts. Umit smiled. Chapter 188 A Thoughtful Banquet. Advertise here. As the person who changed the world structure, I have this capital. Dogra Picro sighed as he stared at Tren. The atmosphere of the dessert banquet was very lively, with dazzling lights, laughter and noise. In this lively scene, Capone Becky stands out. As the person who is about to unite with Big Mom's pirates as in-laws, he is currently surrounded by his own mafia members, talking with some of Big Mom's lesser-known children in a dashing manner. Your beauty makes me wait for that day to come every day, Kaifeng. Capone. Becky looked at the pink-haired, masculine-looking Charlotte Kaifeng in front of her, wearing a floral skirt and a blue cape. Chi Feng's character is a bit ambitious, and because of her father and mother, she is even more dedicated and devoted. So when faced with Capone's unabashed love, Becky directly replied, I'll just take care of my husband and raise my children. But Capone. Becky's eyes that showed great love concealed unfathomable calculations. From the moment she entered the new world, Capone. Becky understood her upper limit as a pirate. Therefore, he decided to join the Big Mom Pirates without hesitation, and used the banner of the Big Mom Pirates to transform and develop his old business in the new world and return to the mafia. I thought that after the death of Whitebeard and Red Hair, their territory in the new world would immediately fall into a sea of blood. However, due to the existence of that guy, not many pirates dared to reach out. Capone Becky was feeding a piece of honey cake to Chiffon with a fork, while he was distractedly paying attention to what was happening on Tren's side. Welcome to the dessert banquet. Mom. Auntie arrived a few steps behind Tren, but she always had a warm smile on her face, making it impossible to ignore her persistence and love for desserts. Humph, you are really a good husband who is good at pretending, Capone. Not far away, Perospero, standing next to his aunt, stared at Capone, Becky and his sister with disdain, his eyes revealing deep emotions. Deep disgust. Isn't North Blue's Vinsmoke here? The aunt glanced around, with a hint of dissatisfaction on her face and a slight frown. Upon hearing the aunt's question, the eldest son Perospero, who was standing aside, immediately nodded respectfully and responded, Yes, Mom, they did not come. The aunt raised the corner of her mouth, chuckled, and said with a little sarcasm, How arrogant. These guys from North Blue. There was a hint of displeasure in her eyes, but she did not show excessive anger or anxiety. For the Vinsmoke family, as the royal family of North Blue, they rule the entire North Blue region with their powerful force. This makes them eligible to participate in world conferences even if they do not have territory. And at this point in time, they are in a period of great success and have a prominent position. So even Bigmom, one of the four emperors, they haven't taken to heart yet. Therefore, although Auntie is dissatisfied with the arrogant attitude of the Vinsmoke family, she does not intend to cause trouble easily. After all, it's hard for a strong dragon to defeat a local snake, not to mention that Auntie herself can't leave her territory, Cake Island at will. Jenny Tren, if he is willing to help me. In the sweet fruit area on the left side of the banquet, Bonnie was eating to his heart's content while looking at Trent as he entered. The competition between the emperors of the underground world is hidden beneath the surface, but it is like a hidden tide. Everyone has their own ideas. Capone. Every slight movement of Becky and every exchange of glances may be a step towards his future development of mafia power in the new world. Even Big Mom has her own plans, plus Perospero's deal. In this way, a banquet that was joyful and harmonious on the surface, but filled with subtle calculations in every corner, officially began. What a fun party. The table in front of Tren was filled with all kinds of desserts, from exquisite small cakes to colorful macarons, each flavor contained the pastry chef's ingenuity. Tren picked up a piece of blue macaron and ate it. Well, it's just so-so. The one made by White Bear is still delicious. Indeed. Perhaps because he was used to White Bear's craftsmanship, Thor picked up a green macaron and put it in his mouth to taste it carefully. Will you? Poe muttered. This guy was already performing 38 macarons in one mouthful, and he was still taking them from the table. The 102nd one. Suddenly, when Poe wanted to grab the last macaron on the table, a slender, white and tender little hand with nail polish also stretched out. This is my 102nd. Poe and Bonnie looked at each other and shouted with mouths full of food. Are you sure you want to fight with Dragon Warrior? Poe swallowed the food in his mouth and stared at Bonnie. Bonnie watched Abao turn around and turn into a child, and said with tears in his eyes, if you want to eat. No, you, I. Looking at Bonnie who suddenly turned into a child, Poe was really at a loss. Captain. Thor looked at Tren and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Tren raising his hand. It's okay. Tren smiled slightly, then walked up to Bonnie, lowered his eyes and said, stop pretending. Looking at Tren, Bonnie hesitated for a moment and finally released the fruit's ability. I didn't expect that eating a dessert would be so troublesome. What's wrong with approaching me so suddenly? Tren said bluntly. Huh. Bonnie frowned, grabbed the last macaron and threw it into his mouth. No, that's mine. Abao sighed helplessly. Since when does eating dessert call you close? Don't be ridiculous, Mr. Tron leader. Bonnie laughed. Seeing Bonnie's refusal to admit it, Tren smiled and shook his head and said, then you are quite good at eating. Eat from the left table to the front table. The dessert banquet is divided into left and right tables and front and back tables. The guests sit on the left and right, the front table is where the aunt entertains the distinguished guests, and the back table is where some pastry chefs who now make on-site desserts stay. Each table has various areas, so it's impossible to eat all the way. Tren's words made Bonnie blush slightly, but she quickly regained her composure, snorted and said, it's just a coincidence, I just like sweets. Tren smiled and said nothing. He knew that Bonnie must have something up his sleeve, but he had no intention of exposing her. After all, everyone has their own secrets and purposes. As long as Bonnie doesn't do anything detrimental to herself, Tren won't interfere too much with her behavior. Then try a smarter way next time. After saying that, Tren was about to turn around and return to his seat. Hey, Bonnie suddenly said, can you help me? Chapter 189 The 14th Partner. A wise man never chooses to believe in distant words. My brother and I have a very good relationship, but he is a little disobedient. I have always been a civil servant in Shirima. Yes, I will kill your civil servant with 3 axes. Now that I've left Shirima and my stupid brother, there's no chance he'll ever find me again. Desert Shinigami. Haha, that's just the old name. Now my friends prefer to call me Desert Living Buddha. Again, if you think my knowledge of archaeology is fake, then I still know a little bit about and am good at long axes. There is always someone you have to believe in, right? Gnosis appears. Tren turned his head slightly and looked sharply at Bonnie in front of him. Although she looks hot and seductive, in fact, she is just a 9-year-old child. The mature normalcy she shows is just the ability given by her age-old fruit. While Tren was staring at her closely, Bonnie also turned her gaze to the man in front of her without any sign of weakness. After all, if this man is willing to help, saving his father will be easy. So, Bonnie asked again, are you willing to help me? No matter what the conditions are, I can agree. Upon hearing these words, the corners of Tren's mouth raised slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. He said slowly, conditions. What conditions can a person who needs my help have to meet my needs? Hearing this, Bonnie couldn't help but feel helpless and disappointed, and then raised his eyes again, I can. However, before she could respond, Tren suddenly seemed to have remembered something and interrupted her bluntly, you have to think carefully before you speak. I am different from that Blackbeard guy. Blackbeard is here, when he defeated Bonnie, he said he would let her be his woman. I am not the kind of person who has special fetishes for children. I am a serious and promising young man who grew up under a teacher and received a good education for 9 years. It's okay to be a dragon knight, there's no need to talk about anything else. Hee. Thor smiled confidently when he heard the dragon knight. No, Sister Thor, why do you look so confident? Abao looked confused. Because whoever rides a dragon will be ridden by a dragon. The corners of Thor's mouth raised slightly, revealing his pointed teeth. Do you know my age? Bonnie grasped the key point, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Because she has had this future appearance ever since she went to sea, no. Ever since she ate the susui fruit, so it is impossible for anyone except her father to know her true age. Not to mention, I had absolutely no interaction with Loon before. It would be even more impossible for you to say that Loon had investigated you before you went to sea. Is there someone on his ship who can see what happened in the past through time? Thinking of this, Bonnie couldn't help but shudder. Open black lens bracket 5% Bonnie close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 165% summon close black lens bracket. Looking at Bonnie's unpredictable expression, Tren said directly gate of opening, there are some things that no one can hide if I want to know them. Including what you want me to do for you. After saying this, Tren stared at Bonnie quietly. However, Bonnie did not answer immediately and seemed to be still thinking about something. She bit her lips tightly, and the bright red lipstick on her lips looked particularly eye-catching. At the same time, her eyes flickered, as if she was struggling fiercely deep in her heart because she was worried that Tren was trying to trick her. Faced with Bonnie's silence, Tren's lips slightly raised, revealing an imperceptible smile. He was well aware of the contradictions and entanglements in Bonnie's heart at this moment, but he was not in a hurry, he just watched her silently, waiting for her to make a decision. Forget it. Finally, Tren took firm steps and walked slowly towards Bonnie. When he walked to Bonnie, he gently leaned down, put his mouth close to Bonnie's ear, and then whispered in a low and magnetic voice. Barmeloso Bear or Bartholomew Bear. Open black lens bracket 10% Bonnie close black lens bracket. The moment the sound entered his ears, Bonnie's pupils trembled, and then he quickly turned his head, but at this time Tren had not raised his face yet, so. A dinner plate was put in front of Bonnie's mouth. Open black lens bracket 5% Bonnie close black lens bracket open black lens bracket 180% summon close black lens bracket. What a quick return to defense. Abao sighed as he watched Thor disappear beside him. Alan also nodded in agreement. Bonnie looked at this scene and took half a step back. Then he looked at Tren, then turned and ran away. Huh, shouldn't you continue to be shocked at this time, and then crazily provide me with spiritual emotions? Looking at Bonnie running away, Tron was stunned. Forget it, I've made a little profit more or less. Just enough time to continue smoking. Bonnie's appearance is not important, Tren will continue to summon for the third time now. Thinking of this, Tren clicked on the summoning system interface familiarly, found the flashing summoning button, and pressed it gently. Show up. Listen to my call. Perospero, this is. The ant who had been staring at Orn looked at Tren, who suddenly looked strange, and frowned. Hearing his mother's words, Perospero also smiled awkwardly and explained again. Strong people all have some quirks, mother. On Terran's side, this time the magic circle did not become larger or fleeting, but became regular. At the same time, a figure about 4 meters tall walked out of it. Name. Single Noble Gnosis, from League of Legends. Abilities. Knowledge Brain, Shinigami Advent, Devouring Souls. Strength. Not all Shinigami has arrived, why are you still doubting it? Close black lens bracket. A kobold dressed like a gentleman and wearing glasses walked out with a proud expression. What falls must rise again. Gnosis. Oh, isn't this the leader? I didn't expect you to be really here. There are Thor, Orn and Abao, you are all here. Where are the others? Gnosis said while revealing his face that arrogant expression. Well, that's the tone of a single aristocrat. Everyone is on the boat, we are the only ones here. Abao spread his hands helplessly and said, then raised his hands to cover his mouth and whispered softly, but I suspect this may be a secret operation. Now that you are here, Gnosis, it seems that my guess is right. Oh. Abao suddenly screamed, covered his head with his hands, and walked aside silently. Tren looked at Gnosis with a smile, stretched out his hand, and said with a smile on his face, welcome back, our archaeologist. How can the adventure group lack the presence of Gnosis? Gnosis responded with a smile, raised his hand and held Tren's hand tightly. Chapter 190. Do you want to listen to me or to Axe? Advertise here. At the grand dessert banquet, BIGMOM sat at the gorgeous dining table and enjoyed a variety of delicious desserts. The atmosphere of the banquet gradually became warm and cheerful. The guests were chatting or tasting, and laughter and admiration came one after another. And Big Mom has been paying attention to Orn, so she can clearly see the situation on Tren's side. When did this dog-headed man appear there? Looking at Gnosis shaking hands with Tren, the ant was really confused. She had been paying attention to Tren. Oh, next to her. Kindness. But there was no fluctuation in Gnosis's appearance, unless he jumped out in the blink of an eye, but that was impossible. It's really what I thought. Jenny Tron has infiltrated Cake Island. No. It's the entire world. Perospero was also confused, but with Orn and Abao's foreshadowing, he no longer wanted to. Why are you surprised? What a scary guy. Not only Big Mom and Perospero, but suddenly, a unique Gnosis appeared next to Tren, and those guys who had been paying attention to Tren. Beside him, Gnosis soon caught his attention in his kobold form. A dog-headed fur tribe. Stussy said with a frown. This is not a fur tribe. Fur tribe does not have this characteristic. Except for the head, this guy does not have many animal symbols in other parts. Especially without a tail. Morgans denied that as a news tycoon, he knew better. So it's a new species. A flash of emotion flashed in Umit's eyes. His shipping is all over the world. If you can find the country of this species, you can also rely on this to mix the population auction of Sabayati Islands. Especially since the Marine Corps was moved to the New World, Sabayati Island has completely become a lawless zone. Haha. Drago Picro noticed Umit and sneered in his heart without saying anything. After all, he had been preparing for the banquet for a long time. The sudden appearance of unusual Gnosis, with a mysterious aura, added a strange color to the originally lively banquet. Mom. The ant showed a strong interest in Gnosis and was already walking towards Tren with a smile. Her eyes were attracted by Gnosis' unique temperament. In addition, Gnosis, like Orn, was of a race that she did not have in any other country, so she took the initiative to talk. It's really another surprise. The ant walked up to her with a smile on her face. Won't you introduce me, Jenny Tren? My name is Gnosis, the archaeologist of the Tren Adventure Group. Gnosis slightly moved the white bow under his neck, added the gold chain single lens between his left eye, and the gentleman's beard on both sides of his mouth. Don't say that it's really just like a human being and a dog. Archaeologist. After learning that Gnosis was an archaeologist, Auntie's curiosity was completely ignited. Is it from O'Hara? O'Hara. Should be called Shurima, right? Gnosis was stunned, but the ant had already preconceived the idea. After all, except for the great genius archaeologist on O'Hara Island, who else dares to call himself an archaeologist openly? Especially after Buster Call, even Robin himself did not call himself an archaeologist. Mom. Auntie laughed again. She was still very interested in ancient civilizations and historical relics, especially in the process of collecting races and unique creatures, and she also collected a lot of things. So Gnosis' identity surprised and excited her. Jenny Tren, how about I invite you to take a look at my collection? Auntie enthusiastically invited Trent to visit her private collection. After all, Trent is the leader of the adventure group, and Auntie knew well not to ask Gnosis directly. Gnosis is interested, just let him go. Tren said with a smile, what's so interesting about the collection? Just in time for the aunt to leave, the beasts, horses, and snakes at the banquet would come together to refresh his soul and emotions. Then let me go and take a look. Gnosis is not interested in sweets, so why not look at some historical objects? Just like that, Big Mom and Gnosis left together, but Perospero didn't follow. In Auntie's private exhibition room, many collections are placed here. Mom. At this time, a man also dressed elegantly came out. He looked very strange. Sipst, why didn't you go to the dessert banquet? Auntie said softly. Normally, Auntie is very gentle to her children. You know, Mom, I love being here. Yeah, the aunt nodded and then introduced. This is my 41st son, Charlotte Shipster. He also has a lot of insights into cultural relics. Gnosis, archaeologist. Gnosis was still very polite so far. Archaeologist. While Shebuster nodded, a trace of emotion flashed in his eyes. Mom, just now, Sebust, you had a conversation with Gnosis. The aunt squinted her eyes and smiled. It was obvious that she wanted to see Gnosis' real talent. Exchanges in archaeological scholarship are necessary. Siebster looked at Gnosis with a smile. So next, Siebst had his own unique insights and interpretations of each of Auntie's collections, and from a professional perspective, he revealed more stories and secrets behind these cultural relics for Auntie. Mr. Gnosis, what do you think? After Siebster finished speaking, he turned to stare at Gnosis. Gnosis, on the other hand, directly picked up a fragment of an ancient national civilization that Sebust had just explained, and pinched it gently. What is my identity, Gnosis? The things of a country 100 years ago are not worthy of my study. Quote. You. Sibster gritted his teeth as he looked at the broken collection, and raised his hand to point at Gnosis. In my opinion, most of the so-called collections in your house are just junk. Gnosis said and walked directly to one of them. Like this one, it looks like it's an item within 100 years, but it turns out it's classified as 300 years old. And this, which is obviously a modern handicraft, is treated as an antique and put on display here. Gnosis continued to point out other issues. His sharp eyes seemed to be able to see through all falsehoods. After hearing what Gnosis said, the aunt's face became a little ugly, but she still managed not to have an attack. HMPH, your so-called experts can only exaggerate some ordinary things, but they don't understand the real value at all. Gnosis said disdainfully. Gnosis' words stunned Sebust and Auntie who were present. They did not expect that Gnosis would criticize these collections so bluntly, without any sense of worldliness. However, Shipster was unwilling to accept Gnosis' criticism easily. He sneered and said, Mr. Gnosis, maybe you have your own opinion, but these collections have been appraised by me, and their value is undeniable. Gnosis shook his head, it's just that you think they are valuable. If I guess correctly, most of the things here are just to fool people. I see that you obviously don't understand anything, you're just pretending here. Shebuster shouted, whether it's valuable or not, it's not you who has the final say. Then you have the final say. Gnosis looked at Sheepst with sharp eyes, real treasures can withstand the test of time. And your so-called collections are just temporary vanity. Quote. The aunt frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. She began to re-examine her collection. Is it really what Gnosis said? After all, these things were really given by guests when she held a tea party. At this moment, Gnosis walked up to an ancient map fragment, pointed to a mark on it and said, for example, this, you think is a key clue to find a lost treasure, but it is actually someone else's deliberately torn up old map. Of. Sheeb's eyes widened. In fact, he already understood what Gnosis just said, or he already knew his mistake, but he would not admit that he was not as good as Gnosis. Impossible, you are just talking nonsense, I have been researching this thing for 2.5 years. Gnosis raised his lips slightly, real archaeological research is not about the length of time. Mom, this guy is just talking nonsense without any research at all. He is deceiving you. Looking at Sheeb's appearance, Gnosis said directly to the aunt. Next, I will have an academic discussion with this Sheepst. Yeah, okay, Shipster is just right, you can also study. The aunt nodded without hesitation, or her interest had disappeared at this time, so she turned and left. Alas, after the aunt left, Gnosis sighed, then slowly took off the lens and took out the long axe. Wait, what are you doing? Sheepst looked at this scene and didn't react for a while. Your stubbornness reminds me of that group of guys in Shirima. A bunch of guys. Shipster frowned, and Gnosis had already rolled up his sleeves. They are just like you, they know their question is wrong but they still speak harshly, so. In terms of archaeology, do you want to listen to me or do you want to listen to Axe? Siebster. Chapter 191 Tom and Jerry's Journey to the Holy Land. Advertise here. The dessert banquet on Cake Island remains the same, but on the other side of the Red Earth continent, this world-recognized Holy Land. The seat of the world's supreme ruler welcomed 2 guests. The sun shines through the clouds and softly shines over the Holy Land of Mariajoya. The golden light complements the white buildings. Tom and Jerry set foot on this land. I didn't expect it to be quite high. Tom frowned as he looked at the abyss under the red cliff where the sea could not be seen. It did take a lot of time to fly up. Jerry nodded. But, is this the so-called world government? I don't know, Tom said calmly, and then cast his eyes into the distance, looking at the prosperous Holy Land Marie Joa in the center in front of him. But there should be someone there who knows. Then go over and ask. Following Tom's gaze, Jerry also saw it. In this way, the two of them walked openly on the road leading to the city where World Noble lived. The closer they got to the tall and majestic buildings around them, the more exquisite the sculptures became. There were uniformed guards patrolling from time to time along the way, and the atmosphere was strict. But the strange thing was that these guards did not stop Tom and Jerry. It's funny, no one stopped us. Tom chuckled watching this scene. Maybe, just a little slower. When Jerry said this, the two of them were about to arrive in the city, and suddenly 7 figures appeared in front of them. These people wearing special uniforms are the elite organization directly affiliated with Tianlong and World Noble, CP0. This place is no longer accessible to you. Since you have joined the world government, you should know some rules. The captain of CP0 said coldly. Resign. Tom and Jerry looked at each other, and Kakuzu couldn't help but raise their mouths. No wonder they didn't stop us. Jerry. Tom's voice was full of sarcasm. Jerry also quickly echoed, except for Captain Tren, there is no one in this world who is worthy of us. What do you mean? Captain CP0's eyes were deep, as if he was judging whether what the two people said was true. After all, the news I learned from the CP intelligence organization was that Tom and Jerry defected to the world government together, so they didn't deliberately stop them and let them almost reach the hinterland of the Holy Land. Well, to be honest, even if I stop those soldiers, I can't stop them, so I just sell them to save some face and show that the world government attaches great importance to them. Of course, the premise of all this is that Tom and Jerry defect to the world government. But at this moment, Tom and Jerry's words made them feel confused again. After a moment, he slowly said, the news from the intelligence organization, you are not surrendering. Resign, is that what you mean? Jerry used the phone bug he got from the members of the Candy Island CP organization. This thing has been ringing for a while, so I just replied a word or two instead. Jerry said and directly used the transformation technique ninjutsu in Hokage. Wood-style wraps branches around himself to transforming himself into the appearance of the members of the CP organization who recruited him on Candy Island, and even his voice is the same. Hey, Jerry, at first I thought you were bored and just played with that thing, but I didn't expect there was this level. Tom smiled. No way, who makes me smarter than you all the time? Tom, Jerry said, crushing the intelligence phone bug in his hand. Trouble. Looking at these two guys, the face under the CP0 captain's mask was ugly. In fact, we cannot say that the CP organization is stupid. First, all the CP members in Candy Island were killed by Tom and Jerry. Second, the intelligence phone bug on Candy Island was taken by Jerry, and there is no so-called transformation technique in the pirate world. Only the mimic fruit is available in their information base. Tom and Jerry's abilities are not comparable to the mimic fruit's ability. The third is that Tom and Jerry arrived too quickly and did not give CP time to investigate. They had already flown to Mariajoya in almost a day or so. For a time, 7 CP0 members surrounded Tom and Jerry, and the atmosphere became tense. At this time, a CP0 wearing a mask with a vertical stripe pattern moved his left foot backward slightly, and then instantly exerted force, shaving. Like a cheetah. At the same time as the flash, he took out his phone bug and shouted loudly, Level 1 alarm, Tom and Jerry did not take refuge, they, Before he finished speaking, the member of the CP0 organization broke out of countless branches and fell from the air like rags. Wood style. The art of defending and inserting. Jerry said calmly, and slowly retracted the wooden thorn in his left hand. Shave. The battle was about to begin. 2 CPs with patterns instantly attached themselves to their armed colors and attacked Tom from both sides. Bang. A powerful wave of air arose. It's done, one of them has been eliminated. The 2 CPs were overjoyed. Isn't this bad? Suddenly Tom's voice came, and then a pair of red eyes flashed through the smoke. I saw Tom blocking the CP coming from the right with his left hand, blocking the CP coming from the left with his right hand, and raised the corners of his mouth. After all, I'm here to play with you, how can I let you take action first? Tom pulled hard with both hands, and the 2 CP0 members collided head to head. But Tom jumped directly on the spot, then turned around and kicked, kicking both of them out. Damn it! The 2 CP0 members who were kicked roared. They stood up and flash attacked Tom again. Tom nimbly dodged their attacks while constantly using physical skills to fight back. What a fast speed! A CP0 member exclaimed. Another CP0 member said, this is a holy place, we can't let them run wild. After saying that, he released his domineering energy and tried to suppress Tom. Wood style. The tree world has arrived. At this time, Jerry clapped his hands, and countless tree roots emerged from the ground. In an instant, a sea of trees appeared in front of everyone. The trees were tall and strong, with lush branches and leaves, like a green ocean. At this time, the captain of CP0 shouted loudly, the 3 of us will deal with Tom first. This guy's ability is more troublesome. You two go deal with Jerry. Upon hearing the captain's order, CP0 immediately took action. Two of the CP0s rushed towards Jerry quickly. They were holding sharp swords with armed colors in their hands. They were obviously two swordsmen. They instantly started a fierce battle with Jerry. That's great, Tom. Jerry blocked the two attacks and said with a smile, they even assigned opponents. The remaining three CP0s who were good at physical skills attacked Tom without hesitation. Their movements were swift and fierce. No way, I've always been better than you. Tom laughed proudly. He was very satisfied with CP0's arrangement. His Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan moved quickly in his eyes, emitting a strange light while instantly seeing through the attack paths of the three CP0s, and made countermeasures. So, you can keep the whole body. Chapter 192 A Mere Fatal Injury. Advertise here. Holy Place, Maridia, Center. In the familiar hall, 5 old guys gathered together again. Saint Garcia Satan frowned and said dissatisfied, those two guys are already making trouble outside, hasn't General Marine arrived yet? He was very unhappy with Tom and Jerry's intrusion. At the same time, Tom and Jerry's intrusion did not escape the eyes of the 5 of them. Peter calmly replied, since the Marine headquarters moved to the New World, the generals have become busy. They might not get here in time, and no one would have expected that someone would actually dare to break into Mariajoya. Quote. Human Waokyu Lisheng spoke slowly, with a hint of reproach in his tone. CP's intelligence organization should not have made such a mistake. A mistake allowed the enemy to easily enter the Holy Land. It seems that CP needs to re-examine his ability. Quote. Marcus Mars frowned and said impatiently, what's the point of discussing these now? People have already come in, and CP0 can't stop them. Other families will learn this news soon. If the situation is critical, we can only send the cavalry of God. Don't go to such trouble, let me deal with the two of them. Zamburn v. Nasushiro Sage said in a cold tone. As he spoke, he picked up first-generation Kidetsu and stood up slowly. There was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. The Holy Land has been attacked one after another. After this matter is resolved, the Fleet Admiral position of the Warring States period can be retired. His voice was low and firm, and he seemed to have made a decision. Hearing these words, the other 4 people showed surprise. They originally thought that other measures would be taken, but they did not expect that Zambalong v. Nasho Langsheng planned to take action himself. Saint Nastarang, you. One of them opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by Zambalong v. Saint Nasathulong. Just right, I also want to see what strength they have. The corners of Saint Zambalong v. Nasho Lang's mouth raised slightly. By the way, let them know that the Holy Land is not a place where you can come and leave whenever you want. Once you come, be prepared to leave your head behind. As soon as he finished speaking, Zambalong v. Nasho Langsheng left the conference hall completely, and his figure disappeared into the sunlight. Marie Joa, 10 miles away from World Noble. The place is in a mess, and the originally flat land has become rugged, as if it had been baptized by a tragic battle. Many trees were also broken, and their branches were scattered around, giving people a sense of dilapidation and desolation. On the green battlefield among the ruins, 2 CP0 members fell there. One of them held a broken sword in his right hand, and his left arm was empty, hanging feebly by his side. He was lying next to a tree trunk, his head hanging down, lifeless. Not far away, another companion was even more miserable. His body was pierced by a tree and hung on the tree like a string of candied haws. The mask on his face was broken, and bright red blood flowed down the trunk of the tree, staining the ground red. Weird. Monster. I said, I will give you the whole body. Tom stood in front of the CP0 captain, his scarlet pupils ruthless. His body was trampled under Tom's feet, blood kept pouring out of his mouth, and the breath of life was gradually disappearing. The other 2 CP0 members had already died, one was buried in Tom's heart, and the other had his throat bone broken. Coupled with the corpses of the Holy Land guards added on the way, the whole scene is full of blood and death. Just when Tom showed an unhappy expression, he suddenly felt a powerful aura approaching him. He squinted his eyes and carefully observed the movements around him, muttering to himself, huh. This aura seems to be a pretty powerful guy. At this moment, a sound similar to the tapping of clogs came, and at the same time a figure slowly walked from a distance. Oh, the guy who can really dance seems to be here. Jerry. However, Jerry on the side acted very calmly, as if he had long been accustomed to such a situation. And there are quite a few people coming. Jerry's eyes flashed with an imperceptible light. It's really cruel. You too. He has a wrinkled face, a bald head, glasses, a hooked nose, and thin eyebrows. He is wearing a white robe that is open enough to expose his chest and abdomen. His waist was fixed with a golden belt, and he wore beige clog sandals, and holding the first-generation Kidetsu in his hand, Nastarose slowly walked out from the shadow of the trees to the left of the 2 of them. Phew. At the same time, at least 40 members of the CP organization showed up. Many of them were CP0s, but more of them were guys with middle-level combat capabilities in the CP. Nasho Langsheng stared at Tom and Jerry and said slowly and coldly, do you know where this place is? Of course I know. Tom took a step forward, and at the same time, the Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo turned into Samsara eyes. Isn't that right? Are you just here to have fun? A bald bastard. Ha ha. A disdainful sneer appeared on the corner of Saint Nasho Lang's mouth, but the next second, his movements were as fast as lightning, making it difficult to see clearly. In the blink of an eye, the first-generation Kitetsu in his hand was quickly pulled out, and at the same time, a black lightning unique to Conqueror's Hawkeye wrapped around his body and flashed past. When everyone looked intently again, Saint Nasho Lang had actually teleported behind Tom. Ignorant guys always don't understand why they die. Saint Nasho Lang's voice was cold and low, as if coming from the abyss of hell. Before he finished speaking, the knife in his hand was quietly sheathed, and the whole movement was done smoothly and in one go. Even the people present could not capture the moment when he drew his sword. They just felt that everything was over as soon as his eyes blurred. Tom. Jerry's eyes widened in horror, and a chill filled his heart. Because at that moment, Tom's head had been cut off, but strangely, there was no blood spurting out. Instead, it was like the scene when Buggy was cut off, and the body and head were separated very strangely. Ha 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 ha. With a burst of laughter, Tom's head returned to its original position, intact. Seeing this scene, Saint Nasho Lang couldn't help but frown, and a trace of doubt arose in his heart. No. I had clearly possessed domineering energy just now. Even if he had the fruit ability, he would not be able to survive so easily. Masaka. Just when Nasho Langsheng realized something, Tom suddenly turned his head, his reincarnation eyes flashed with purple light, and his eyes revealed a kind of madness and arrogance. Jerry, I'm fine, it's just a fatal injury. Tom's tone was extremely arrogant, as if he was mocking the incompetence of Saint Nasho. Impossible. How can this guy have immortality? Nasho Langsheng held the handle of the knife tightly, his face gloomy. At this moment, he realized that the enemy in front of him was stronger and more difficult than imagined. Chapter 193 Keep Dancing. Advertise here. On this battlefield opened up by the arrival of the tree world, it was terrifyingly quiet at the moment. Did Sir just kill him? And he was still domineering. It's impossible. His head has already been chopped off. Could it be that he is really a monster? For a moment, the CPs who came with Saint Nasho Lang saw the scene in front of them, and various thoughts came to their hearts. How do you feel? Jerry jumped to Tom's side and asked with concern. Jerry. However, Tom did not turn his attention to Jerry at all, and just whispered, he is mine. Hearing this, Jerry still didn't understand what Tom was thinking. He frowned and sighed helplessly. Okay, let me handle the rest. Thanks. No way. After all, Senju Jerry always dotes on our Uchiha Tom. Then, Tom Uchiha stood at one end of the battlefield, his sharp eyes revealing determination and confidence. His body shape is matched with the unique armor of the Warring States period, with clear lines, and he holds a sickle in his left hand. As for the Uchiha fan, it is cut out only when necessary. Every breath of Tom seemed to carry the rhythm of power, and the pair of reincarnation eyes shone with mysterious light in his eyes, as if he could see through everything. Probably not immortal. On the other side, Nasushiro-sei calmed down and thought again, holding the first-generation Kidetsu, his posture as tall as a pine tree. His eyes were firm and cold, and he exuded a chilling aura. As a great swordsman and a powerful figure in the Five Elders, his momentum is not inferior to that of Uchiha Tom. Please me. The battle was about to break out, and Uchiha Tom took the lead in attacking. He flashed and rushed towards Saint Nasho Lang like a ghost, his speed was staggering. Just tell me, this is not a place for you to run wild. Nasushiro Sage was unhurried, and the first-generation Kidetsu in his hand instantly became armed and domineering, ready to receive this swift blow. Tom got close in an instant, swung his scythe, and struck with a powerful slash. Nasho Langsheng dodged sideways, and at the same time Gui Che swung his sword and slashed at Tom. Tom reacted very quickly and avoided the blow with a backflip, while his Samsara eye flashed. Wounded Tomb Border Prison. Tom uses the wheel grave to split his own shadow. With one eye, he can only split one shadow, but with both eyes, the number of shadows increases to 4. Flaw. Saint Nasho Lang should have flashed away at the moment Tom cast it, but the attack seemed to be ineffective. In an instant, Saint Nasho Lang paused for a moment, and his eyes met, as if time had frozen at this moment. Not good. Saint Nasho Lang secretly screamed in his heart, and the powerful domineering energy of seeing and hearing made him clearly feel that there were 3 identical murderous intentions coming from different directions. This murderous intention followed him like a shadow, as if it wanted to engulf him. Immediately afterwards, Tom's shadow attacked again. He displayed superb physical skills, and his fists, feet and sickle blade attacked Nasho Langsheng like a sudden storm. With his excellent swordsmanship and domineering power, Nasushiro Sage skillfully diffused Tom's attacks time and time again, but he was still chopped off several times and blood spattered everywhere. There is no way. Nasho Langsheng doesn't have the Samsara eye, nor is he the Sage of 6 Paths, so he can't see the figure of the Samsara at all, and can only be beaten passively. No. Is that all you have? Tom seized the opportunity, attacked Nasho Langsheng crazily, and taunted. For a time, the swords were blazing, and every weapon clash produced dazzling sparks, illuminating the entire battlefield. Nasho Langsheng gritted his teeth and persisted, struggling to resist Tom's attack. He knew that if he could not find a way to crack the wheel tomb, this battle would become very difficult. Keep dancing for me. Keep dancing. Tom shouted loudly, and the movements in his hands became more and more fierce. Saint Nasholang's body was already covered with scars. In the fierce battle, Saint Nasholang gradually discovered some clues. He realized that although the wheel tombs were difficult to detect, their movements seemed to have certain patterns. Through careful observation, he began to try to predict the location of Wheel Tomb's next attack. But, Shinra Tenzhang. Suddenly a powerful force burst out from Tom, and the surrounding air seemed to be distorted. The powerful repulsion sent Nasho Langsheng flying directly. When Saint Nasholang saw this, he did not dare to be careless and released his armed domineering energy to contend. Damn, it's this guy's eyes. Something's wrong. Nasho Langsheng saw the radiance of the Samsara eye in Tom's eyes and realized something. Oh, you are really an interesting guy. Tom frowned slightly as he saw that the earliest wounds on Saint Nasholang's body had healed. Actually, I'm also very curious about your intention in coming to the Holy Land. Saint Nasholang patted his tattered white robe and released the fruit ability at the same time. His body shape changed instantly. First, his lower body was the limbs of a skeleton horse, and his upper body was a human centaur. At the same time, he reached a height of 6 meters. He looked extremely tall and mighty. And on the back of his neck, a black colorful wave appeared, which was the symbol of the awakening of the animal fruit's ability. In other words, it's Captain Tren's intention in sending you here. Saint Nasholang's voice was low and powerful, with a hint of majesty. Haha, you people always like to self-righteously guess other people's intentions. Tom sneered, and at the same time raised his left hand to cover half of his face, and slowly entered the Six Paths form. His purple and shining samsara eyes slightly raised, his eyes seemed to be demonstrating to the other party. We just think it's fun. Tom's voice was full of provocation and uninhibitedness, and he made no secret of his love for fighting and his contempt for the enemy. How fun. His words were like sharp swords, piercing Saint Nasholang's heart. As soon as he finished speaking, Tom clasped his hands together and launched the black truth-seeking ball to fly towards Nasho Langsheng. Nasushiro Sei wielded the first-generation Kitetsu, slashing vertically and horizontally, trying to smash those black truth-seeking balls one by one, but it was obviously unrealistic. Not bad, it can block my attack. Tom said. You are nothing more than that. Saint Nasholang shot back. Saint Nasholang took a deep breath, and his momentum exploded again. His body leaned forward slightly, like a cheetah about to attack. The next moment, Saint Nasholang's 4-horse bone leg suddenly exerted force, the ground cracked instantly, and his figure shot towards Tom like a cannonball. Chapter 194. Such an attack, I, Uchiha Tom, approve of you. Advertise here. At the same time, the ghost in the hand of Nasushiro Sage shone with a domineering and dazzling light, and the air around the blade was torn, making a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Tom felt the offensive of Saint Nasholang, and his face changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. He quickly raised his left hand, and the truth-seeking ball appeared in front of him, forming a solid shield. Nasho Langsheng was extremely fast and arrived in front of Tom in the blink of an eye. The ghost in his hand slashed at Tom with a fierce momentum. Tom dodged and avoided the blow, but Nasho Langsheng's attack did not stop. His sword skills were like a gust of wind and rain, giving Tom no chance to breathe. Tom was avoiding Nasho Langsheng's attack while looking for opportunities to counterattack. Suddenly, a flash of emotion flashed in his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You seem to have been leading me outside. Are you worried about spreading to the city over there? Tom said, pointing to a city in the distance. When Saint Nasholang heard this, his expression changed slightly, but he did not respond. I seem to have thought of something fun. Tom smiled slightly, quickly made seals with his hands, and muttered something. As he moved, the dark clouds in the sky began to roll, and a powerful energy gathered in them. Nasho Langsheng noticed Tom's behavior and felt an ominous premonition in his heart. He widened his eyes, looking at the huge meteorites gradually forming in the sky, and his face became extremely ugly. Heavenly blockage earthquake star. Tom shouted, and the meteorites in the sky fell like meteors and hit the ground. Bastard. Saint Nasholang roared angrily, and the expression on his face became extremely solemn. He took a deep breath, gathered all the domineering energy in his body on the ghost in his hand, and then swung it with all his strength, and a huge slash shot up into the sky. With unparalleled power, it actually split the meteorite in two and then shattered it completely. Awesome. Tom couldn't help but exclaimed, expressing his appreciation for the strength of Saint Nasholang. Nasho Langsheng was breathing heavily, but he stared at Tom firmly and said, if you have any other tricks, just use them. I will deal with them one by one. But this is just the first meteorite. Tom laughed, with a hint of cunning in his laughter. There's a second one, a third one, a fourth one. Okay, are you ready to deal with so many meteorites? When Saint Nasholang heard this, he suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis in his heart. He raised his head instantly and stared at the sky with all his concentration, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Immediately afterwards, he quickly transformed into a skeleton horse form, and his speed and strength were greatly improved. Then I'll kill you directly. Nasho Langsheng shouted and rushed towards Tom at an astonishing speed. Before the meteorite completely landed on the ground, his ghost attack had already struck Tom. However, Tom smiled slightly, as if he had anticipated all this, and said softly, "Wounded Tomb Border Prison." At this moment, a force that destroyed the world suddenly burst out, and the entire battlefield was instantly swallowed up by the dazzling light. This powerful force shocked everyone, as if the end of the world was coming. However, when the light gradually dissipated, everyone finally saw clearly what was happening on the battlefield. I saw Nasho Langsheng standing there, panting heavily. It was obvious that the blow just now consumed a lot of his physical strength. Around him, the originally menacing meteorites were all chopped into pieces and scattered on the ground. After Nasho Langsheng took a breath, he looked at Tom, a trace of pride flashed in his eyes. It turned out that Saint Nasholang had already reacted the moment he noticed something was wrong. He quickly changed the direction of his attack and concentrated all his power on the meteorite. With this chop, he not only successfully blocked the meteorite's attack, but also chopped them all into pieces. After being played with, you are still so proud. What a ridiculous guy. Tom looked at the scene in front of him, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a disdainful smile. Nasho Langsheng. Words are useless. Saint Nasho Langsheng's eyes became sharper, and he gritted his teeth, preparing to attack again. It seems you haven't given up yet. Tom shook his head gently, with a trace of disdain on his face, but it's all in vain, you can't defeat me. However, I am happy to play with you. You, the old guy, can only touch me through sneak attacks. Quote. Tom's voice was full of ridicule and provocation, which ignited anger in the heart of Nasho Langsheng. Whoops. However, at this moment, Tom suddenly took action. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he rushed towards Saint Nasho Lang in an instant. Nasho Langsheng had no time to react and could only barely duck sideways, but was still scratched by Tom's sickle blade. Nasho Langsheng adjusted his breathing secretly, feeling the pain from the wound. He knew that he was injured, but he didn't care. After all, the bodies of the five of them have the ability to be immortal, so this injury is nothing to them. He looked at Tom, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. It's not a good thing to be too confident. Nasushiro-sei murmured in a low voice. He slowly pulled out the first-generation Kidetsu in his hand, and Conqueror's unique black and red lightning filled the battlefield for a while. His aura became more powerful, as if he had merged with first-generation Kidetsu. Tom looked at Nasho Langsheng and sneered. That's better than a bald old man with half a horse's frame being fooled. His words were full of sarcasm, making Nasho Langsheng's face darken. This is a world created by God, pathetic guy. Following the words of Saint Nasushiro, the aura emitted by the first-generation Kidetsu became stronger and stronger, as if it was going to tear apart the surrounding air. I'll send you away right now. Nasturo Sage completely pulled out Tetsuyo Kidetsu and slashed out horizontally. An unstoppable slash appeared like lightning. Who was the sad thing? Tom didn't try to hide at all, but just watched the slashing attack quietly without blinking. However, for such an attack, I, Uchiha Tom, approve of you. As for swordsmanship, Li Jing's face flashed in Tom's mind, and he took out the Uchiha fan and mocked. You are not worthy yet. If it were him, he could easily block it. Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, Nasho Langsheng's slash was already close to the face and was about to hit Tom. Don't you resist at all. You are an arrogant guy. Saint Nasho Lang sneered, but before he finished laughing, a cold voice came. Uchiha rebound. Bang. In an instant, the Tiangong was turned upside down, and the slash originally directed at Tom was reversed at an alarming speed, heading towards Nasho Langsheng himself. Chapter 195. Adult, takes action. Advertise here. What exactly is this guy's ability? Seeing the reverse attack, Saint Nasho Lang's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief, and his heart was even more disturbed. He didn't expect that the other party could completely reverse his attack. This ability was so weird that a flash of shock flashed in the pupils of Saint Nasho Lang. The distance is too close. Did this guy just deliberately not defend himself and get so close just for this moment? But the slashing speed was so fast that Nasturo-sei had no chance to evade. He quickly turned sideways, raised the first-generation Kidetsu in his hand, and struck forward. Bang! First-generation Kidetsu and Zansho collided head-on. The two forces collided and a powerful air wave burst out instantly. Nasho Langsheng felt a huge force coming, and his body slid backwards involuntarily. And the horse bones of the four limbs were continuously pushed back by the impact of this force, as if they had lost control. Has the domineering spirit also returned together? Nasho Langsheng gritted his teeth and secretly complained in his heart. He discovered that not only was his slashing attack reversed, but even the domineering energy he had released before was also rebounded. At this moment, his fruit ability was suppressed by his own domineering power, making him feel very aggrieved and helpless. Damn it! Nasho Langsheng cursed in his heart, but he had no choice but to grit his teeth and accept it. At the same time, Tom looked at the scene in front of him, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a disdainful smile. He crossed his arms across his chest and sneered. You still want to compete with me, haha. Obviously, he was full of confidence in showing off and believed that Nasho Langsheng was no match for him. Just as Tom was watching the play with gusto, suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air, as if it was teleported. Wearing a green suit, Li Jing is also bald and has a mustache and an obvious Madara birthmark on his forehead. He quietly landed behind Saint Nasho Lang and let out a deep drink. In an instant, he turned into a huge pig-shaped creature. This pig has 4 sharp tusks, its body is covered with Madara spots and warts, and is also wrapped in a mysterious black flame cloud. When Saint Nasho Lang saw the person coming behind him, he frowned and asked, Sage Waokyu Li. Then he said to himself, Admiral Marine hasn't come yet. Or are you talking about the Knights of God? The person sent by Marine is Porsalino. Upon hearing this name, Saint Nasushiro fell into silence. Well, it looks like I may not see him this time. As for the Knights of God, they will not come because the Lord will take action himself. At the mention of, Sir, Saint Nasholang nodded slightly to express his agreement. At this moment, Li Jing also reacted quickly. His fangs instantly transformed into sharp blades, swung at an astonishing speed, and collided head-on with Na's Shou Lang Sheng's slash, completely cancelling it out. Lose. Looks like there's another bald guy. Tom looked at Li Jing, who suddenly appeared in front of him, with a smile on his face. 2 against 2, no problem at all. Jerry slowly landed next to Tom from the side. His body was in a semi-suspended state. It was obvious that he had switched to the mage form at this moment. But at this moment, Li Jing and Nasho Lang Sheng actually released the Devil Fruit's ability at the same time and returned to their normal state. Their eyes were locked on Tom and Jerry. You should go. Waokyu Lisheng and Nasho Langsheng said in unison. Hearing this sentence, Tom and Jerry couldn't help being stunned. They couldn't react for a while. They looked at each other and felt very confused. At the same time, somewhere in the Holy Land, a person slowly opened his eyes. He whispered to himself. Jenny Tren, although she is not a member of the D family, she is indeed a troublesome person. As he finished speaking, Tom and Jerry's figures suddenly disappeared from Mary Joa. The double flower red stick really deserves its reputation. Looking at the place where Tom and Jerry disappeared, Nasushiro Sage held the scabbard of first-generation Kidetsu and sighed softly. I didn't expect you to admit this guy. Li Sheng turned his head slightly and looked at Nasho Lang Sheng. Subtext. The mouth is really tough. Nasho Langsheng smiled softly, with a faint arc at the corner of his mouth. Just a little bit of fun. His eyes were calm and deep, as if he had already understood everything. At the same time, Tom's reincarnation eyes flashed through my mind. Strange eye pupils, I don't know if they can be transplanted. Wangguo, Cake Island. As soon as Auntie and Gnosis left, the people at the dessert banquet started to move, just as Tren had guessed. Jenny Tren, the last time I saw you was on the Golden Lion's floating island. Morgans took the lead and walked over with a wine glass in his hand, smiling at the same time. I didn't expect that in just a few years, you would already be a figure that cannot be underestimated in the sea. Looking at the big beak, small eyes, white feathers, big tail, wearing a black top hat with a red and white feather on the top hat. Morgans is wearing a light blue shirt, a yellow bow tie, red and white plaid trousers, and a black cloak. Tren frowned, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Golden Lion's floating island. Morgans nodded and replied calmly. Yes, when I was invited by the Golden Lion, I thought it would be the first step in his comeback to become famous. Unexpectedly, I witnessed your first battle to become famous. Morgan's tone was very calm, but his eyes were always fixed on Tren, as if observing the other party's reaction. Then, he continued. But Golden Lion made the right bet, your performance in that battle was amazing. Nowadays, whenever people mention you, they will think of the battle that changed the world structure, and this also makes the name of the Golden Lion mentioned again. Quote. Tren smiled slightly. Haha, that's true. But it's more than that. You also used Poster Gull to observe us and sell the information to others. There was a hint of ridicule in his voice. In the past, there were few people on the Black Pearl, so no one was discovered. Now that there are more people, Morgans can easily be discovered using small tricks. As a result, everyone has been eating extra meals for a while. This is just business, no one doesn't make money. Morgans did not deny it, but shrugged. Moreover, your actions are always full of topicality, and my newspaper sales have greatly increased. A sly smile appeared on his face, as if he didn't feel anything wrong with his actions. Besides, everyone has something to be curious about. And that's what I do. That's right. But actually, I'm also curious about something. Looking at Morgans, Tren smiled slightly. I'll tell you everything I know. You have always shown yourself to others in the form of a beast in the form of bird fruit and albatross, so I am very curious about your true identity. How much does this information cost? Upon hearing this, Morgans was stunned. Open black lens bracket 10% Morgans close black lens bracket. Captain Tren, you really love to joke, haha. You think I'm kidding. Chapter 196 Unexpected Announcement. Advertise here. Looking into Terran's eyes, Morgan swallowed his saliva. The corners of his mouth were still raised, but there was no sign of a smile. He just froze there. I didn't expect that the famous Emperor Morgans in the field of intelligence would have such an expression. It's rare. Stussy interrupted the conversation with a smile on his face, and came with a slightly shaky step. This is a favor, Morgans. Stussy suddenly approached Morgans and said, swaying towards Tron. Morgans pursed his beak and did not nod or speak. Captain Tren, I have long admired your name. Stussy walked up to Tren and showed a charming smile. I've been in New World for so long, but I haven't even visited my happy street. You know, the red-haired pirates visited a lot of places back then. Her words are full of enthusiasm and temptation. As the queen of Happy Street, this familiar conversational technique is simply familiar. Tren frowned slightly, but still replied politely on the surface. Then next time, I will bring a few Marine generals to visit you. General Marine. Staus's mind didn't turn around for a while, but he soon understood what the so-called patronizing meant. So Stussy smiled and shook her head. Haha, forget it, Malinfando is still fresh in my mind. However, Captain Tren is not interested, then your other partners. Stussy still doesn't know yet that Tom and Jerry made a surprise attack on Mary Joa, so as CP0, a secret intelligence agency directly under the Draconians, her current task is to contact other members of the Tren Adventure Group. Among pirates, she really didn't believe that there were people who were not lewd. That's why she became the emperor of the entertainment field among the 6 underground emperors with the support of the world government. After all, the third-rate places are the places where news circulates the most. Happy Street, I'm quite interested. At this time, Thor walked up with a smile on his face. How about giving me the coordinates? Open black lens bracket 5% Stussy close black lens bracket. Sit. Coordinates. Stussy looked at the woman in front of her who was wearing a maid uniform, yellow twin ponytails, dragon horns on her head, and a long cyan dragon tail behind her, and was stunned. At the same time, he also recognized the identity of the other party, the dragon maid Thor. Thor glanced at Stussy's chest and sneered. Captain, I'm dragon, so my bust size is D cup. Me too. What are you mocking? Stussy's face suddenly changed and her eyes widened. Is that so? Thor glanced at it and said flatly, C. D. It's D. Stussy shouted, even holding her chest. Don't deceive yourself in front of my pair of true dragon eyes. Thor smiled, with a trace of pride flashing in his eyes. Women are so magical sometimes, and they always pay special attention to things like this scoring mechanism. Just when Thor and Stussy were about to measure it with their hands, Knossos came back. Captain. Knossos nodded when he came to Tren, but he was stunned for a moment when he saw the behavior of Thor and Stussy, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Not to mention Poe and Owen, one is so honest that he is withdrawn, the other is talkative and is interested in a tigress. What should I say? Is there anything you are interested in? Tron asked, looking at Knossos. They're just a bunch of useless things. Thinking of the things in Auntie's collection room, Knossos shook his head, but there is a square rubbing stone tablet deep in the collection room. I'm more interested in that thing. As Big Mom's historical text also placed there. Hearing Knossos' words, Tren frowned. Mom. Suddenly, the hearty laughter of the ant came from a distance. Everyone looked around and saw the ant's huge body slowly standing up. Perospero and Katakuri were originally standing on her left and right sides, but at this moment they were replaced by 2 short figures, Capone Becky in mafia-style clothes and a girl with a similar appearance in a floral skirt. Charlotte Chiffon, who prefers men. The ant smiled and said loudly, thank you all for coming to this dessert banquet today. Now, I want to announce an important news to you, that is my 22nd daughter. Charlotte Chiffon is about to get married to the captain of the Flame Tank Pirates, Capone Becky. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire venue burst into excitement with cheers and applause. The BIGMOM pirates finally chose to unite. The corner of Umit's mouth raised slightly, revealing a smile. I don't know what BIGMOM is planning. This is indeed D's touch. Stussy felt the softness on her hands while looking at the ant on the main stage. Mom, family is always our most important wealth. Perospero said with a firm tone in his eyes. BIGMOM, the tide of time has changed you. Morgan sighed softly, closed the notebook in his hand, and then quickly took out his camera, preparing to record this historic moment. Have the BIGMOM pirates started to take advantage of the marriage relationship? The era of family ties and blood ties seems to be over from now on. Lin. Not far away, there was a short, fat man with a beak-like nose, big lips, and a beard like 2 leaves. Wearing a pink button-down shirt, a white apron underneath, dark purple pants, a yellow scarf, and a big hat. There was a man with a big feather and a sword on it. He looked at the laughing ant and sighed. Gourmet Knight, a former member of the Rocks Pirates, now the chef of the BIGMOM Pirates, and one of the founders of the Pirates, Long Bread. As soon as this news came out, except for Tren and others who had already received the invitation letter, everyone else and some uninformed aunts and children were stunned. From now on, the Flame Tank Pirates are one of the pirate groups under Big MOM. Capone. Becky was very smart, so he shouted loudly. The purpose is to let people present such as Morgan spread the news. This will make it easier for him to use the name of the Big Mom Pirates to do things in the future. Just when everyone thought that the matter was over, the ant suddenly turned her eyes and looked at Tren. What is this old woman looking at me for? Tren frowned and had a bad feeling. Mom. Sure enough, the ant said again. One more thing, that is that the BIGMOM pirates will form an alliance with the Tren Adventure Group. And we are already discussing it. Right, Captain Jenny Thrun. Chapter 197 Auntie's Little Plan. Advertise here. Auntie's second speech was even more explosive than the first. What level of people are the Tren Adventure Group? Just, Battle of Red Harbor, and, War on top. These two events are enough to prove everything. It can be said that the Tren Adventure Group is now another legend that rules the sea after Whitebeard. Now Big Mom says that the Tren Adventure Group is going to form an alliance with the BGIMOM pirates. For a moment, compared to the lively applause just now, it was now eerily quiet. Impossible. This kind of thing. Morgans was shocked and dropped the camera from his hand. I can understand that they are preparing to attack the beast pirates. But hasn't BIGMOM always had a good relationship with Kaido? Drago Picro, who had hair like a lion's mane and wore a clown mask, said solemnly. And while muttering to himself, he also cast his gaze on Umit, who was not far away. He came this time to prepare to kill this, transportation and collection emperor, on the way back. After all, as the emperor of the killer domain, he can do anything as long as he has enough chips. Really or not, does this kind of thing really exist? The two of them formed an alliance. Having already withdrawn his hand from Thor, Stussy's eyes looked wildly at Terran and Big Mom. Of course, it stayed on Tren for a little longer, and then Thor discovered it and pinched it hard with his left hand. Oh, why are you pinching me? Stop staring at the leader, or I'll crush you. The corner of Thor's mouth rose, and then he turned his head and looked at Smoothie in the corner of the banquet. This guy. Smoothie turned his head instantly and protected his chest. At this time, Perospero, who was standing on the lower left side, raised his eyes and stared at his mother. Mom, why didn't you do this? Huh. The ant just looked at Perospero with her pupils slightly moving, and Perospero immediately did not dare to continue talking. So, what are you thinking about? Jenny Tren. The ant withdrew her gaze and turned to Tren. At the same time, everyone present looked at Terran, looking forward to this man's answer. Pa. Tren looked at this situation, raised his hands and clapped his hands, then raised his eyes to stare at the ant, and said with a low smile. Haha, Charlotte, Lin, do you really know what alliance means? Jenny Tren, we have discussed this. The corners of the ant's mouth were still raised, but anyone could tell that it was not a smile. Hey, you know my secret. Bonnie, who had started running away, suddenly ran to Orn's left side from outside. Didn't you leave? Poe looked at Bonnie and frowned. No, why have you become smaller? Oh, you are the kid who snatched the macarons from me just now. Looking at this chubby black and white fat panda, Bonnie rolled his eyes. I am the woman just now, and I don't want to come back, but I can't leave. Cake Island. After saying this, Bonnie also there was a hint of blush. Mom, is the banquet starting so soon? At this time, a tall biscuit warrior with a long beard came out. Biscuit warrior. Umit raised his eyebrows. No, the real guy is hiding inside. Dorag Picro, who has certain strength, said calmly. It seems that Big Momo is really a move, a plan that can be used to attack, retreat or defend. Logger Pietro's words. The original biscuit fighter's body suddenly shattered, followed by a man with purple hair, 3 tufts of hair on the top and back of his head, a sinister face, a scar on his right eye, and a pair of brown gloves. The upper body only has a shoulder pad, bright pink armor and a pink and white Madara dot decorated cloak on the right shoulder. Wearing wide breeches and brown boots, with a sword hanging on his waist, a muscular man 3 meters tall appeared. One of the 3 dessert stars, Biscuit Minister Charlotte Cracker, Paramesha. A person with biscuit fruit ability, with a bounty of 860 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket. My sister announced her marriage, but my brother seems to be late. Cracker said with a smile. I seem to have discovered that there is an unknown ship on Brother Perospero's Candy Island, so I closed the book for them. Not long after Cracker appeared, a man who stepped on the flying book also arrived. He has a slender upper body and a thick lower body, slender limbs, blonde hair that flares out like straw, a round chin, a long pointed nose, a white face, and wears an open-chested, dark jumpsuit with legs and ribs behind. There is a skeleton pattern. He also wears a dark top hat with a light pink ribbon, dark lipstick and eye makeup, and a line on each eyelid. Charlotte's 19th son, Cheese Minister Charlotte Monder, Paramesha Shu Shuguo, nicknamed, Clerical Officer. Bounty of 120 million Baileys. I knew it was you. Monder. Perospero gritted his teeth as he looked at his clever little brother. Mom, I'm here. She looks very fat, with a long nose, black hair tied into a bun with a hairpin, and her hairstyle looks like a gourd. Wearing a woolen coat, a red and white striped scarf, and armor on her arms, Charlotte Snag, who has a small head, walks over with a big samurai sword on her back. Charlotte's 25th son, formerly one of the 4 dessert generals, the top cadre of the Big Mom Pirates, and the Minister of Explosives, Charlotte Snag, has a bounty of 600 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket. Sister, here we come. Smoothie's triplets, Charlotte Strom and Charlotte Snamon, came to Smoothie at the same time. Perospero, Katakori, Snag, Smoothie, Cracker, Monder. Looking at the ant and her children, anyone with a little bit of brains would have already guessed what ant wanted to do. Well, if Tren agrees, then the whole family will be happy. If not, then look at Tren's capital. If you can't help the ant, just say that these guys are here to attend your sister's wedding announcement. What a stupid plan. Stussy sighed, and then Chow Mimi looked at Taren. There are so many kids, so it's so lively. Charlotte, Lin. Taren looked at this scene and smiled. They are all my good children. Aunt Kaido, while staring at Taren. How about it, Jenny Tren? Let's become bigger and stronger together. It's not impossible to kill Kaido. Let's get the One Piece together. Again, do you really know what alliance is? Charlotte, Lin. The meaning of alliance is that both sides have equal strength, but do you recognize yourself? After saying this, Tren's eyes darkened. Alan regained his suppressed figure and his height skyrocketed. On his arms and the horns on his head, inscriptions flowed like magma. I still want to be reasonable, but an axe is also a kind of truth. Nasus directly transformed into Shinigami and came, and for a while his height was almost the same as Orn. There are two people, one on the left and one on the right, one represents the red color of boiling life, and the other represents the dark purple color of the withered life. I knew this was a secret operation. Oh yeah, Abao stared at everyone around him with excitement. Yes, everyone. Will the Black Pearl be trapped? Aren't they all sleeping? Thor thought of Monder's words just now and frowned. Chapter 198. It doesn't matter if there are more people, right? Advertise here. Hey, we're not really going to start a war, are we? Umid and Morgans, the only two underground emperors present who had no fighting ability at all, looked visibly panicked. Mom. Auntie narrowed her eyes and stared at Taren. This is a good opportunity, isn't it? How long do you think your so-called 10,000 kingdoms can last? Tren just sat quietly on the chair, not even bothering to move. My children just came to attend their sister's engagement party. The ant continued. Mom, we can't afford to gamble. Perospero quickly persuaded. Brother Perospero, this is our territory. Monder interrupted. Mom doesn't need to worry at all, as long as the Tren Adventure Group can't come. Shut your mouth, Monder. If you're smart, play it where you should. Perospero shouted loudly. Do you know what we are facing? Those are a group of real monsters. Quote. Faced with Perospero's questioning, Monder quit on the spot. Originally, he and Perospero had a conflict over their positions in the BIGMOM pirates. Both of them were smart from a young age, so why could Perospero do it and he couldn't? The monsters you call are the Black Pearl of the Tren Adventure Group and I have locked them up in the library. It is impossible for them to come out, or they are still immersed in the world of books. Monder said with a proud smile. However, at this moment, a strange BGM came from the sea on Cake Island, like a symphony from hell, which made people's hair stand on end. Immediately afterwards, a huge and luxurious black pearl sailed straight towards Cake Island, like a black castle, giving people an irresistible sense of oppression. How could they possibly do it? With my abilities. Monder's eyes widened in horror, looking at the black pearl in disbelief. He couldn't understand what was happening in front of him, as if the world was turned upside down. Stupid guy, have you really understood this group of monsters? Perospero said through gritted teeth, his heart filled with anger and helplessness towards this ignorant brother. However, at this moment, he did not have time to teach this stupid brother a lesson, because the situation had become more and more critical. How is that possible? My biscuit soldiers. And the ships on the sea. Looking at this scene, cold sweat continued to break out on Cracker's forehead, and his voice was full of fear and confusion. He didn't understand why his biscuit soldiers were defeated so easily, but there was no news about those ships and they disappeared without a trace in an instant. Oops. At this moment, a biting cold air hit, making everyone shiver. Before Cracker had time to react, he was instantly frozen into an ice sculpture by the cold air. His body stiffened and his expression was frozen in surprise and despair. Brother Squidward exhaled a breath of cold air, as if he had completed a difficult task. I don't feel at ease at all. Patrick's bite. Patrick suddenly appeared behind Monder. His left hand turned into hot lava and hit Monder's back hard. Monder screamed and fell from the sky like a cannonball. It's so hot. It's so hot. Help me. Someone come and save me. Monder struggled desperately in the air. His body was wrapped in flames and he was in excruciating pain. His screams echoed throughout the space, making people's hair stand on end. Monder. Katakuri was shocked when he saw this situation. He was about to take action, but suddenly he felt an extremely terrifying murderous aura coming from behind him. He turned around and saw SpongeBob squinting his eyes and the tip of his left index finger shining with light. You'd better not move, SpongeBob said softly, his tone full of threats. Katakuri's expression changed. He knew that he was being targeted by the opponent. If he acted rashly, the consequences would be disastrous. Otherwise, you won't be able to eat the delicious crab burger. SpongeBob continued, with a sly smile on his face. At the same time, Big Wolf's arrogant voice came from a distance. No way. Just at this point, I got tired of playing at once. As his words fell, several figures suddenly fell from the sky. These figures are members of the Charlotte family, including Charlotte Zickert, Charlotte Comper, Charlotte Shibster and Charlotte Mobile. They are all the children of the Charlotte family who took the boat to control the waters of Cake Island after receiving the news. But now they were easily defeated by Big Big Wolf and thrown here. Seeing this scene, Sparrow's face became even more ugly. I can't carry it, I really can't carry it. He realized that compared to the so-called powerful enemy, his family was far stupider than imagined, which was why he was now in trouble. Captain, although I am very happy that you are not here, I can't let you know without notifying me. Li Jing's voice suddenly sounded, followed by a burst of rapid footsteps. Everyone at the banquet looked sideways, and saw Li Jing wearing a purple robe, holding a sword, and walking steadily at the front. Steve and Big Big Wolf followed closely, looking serious and focused. Tuanzi hunched over Timo and moved forward cautiously. Sadako was floating in the air, floating lightly. Bai Shang was carrying an axe on his back and holding something similar to a menu in his hand. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed as if he was thinking about what to do in the evening. Gengar did not get into the shadow as usual, but instead opened his mouth, showing a ferocious smile, and jumped up and down his chubby body. Everyone. Dragon Warrior, there is no need for such a warm welcome ceremony. When Abao saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help showing a look of surprise, with a happy smile on his face. He is full of deep feelings for this team, and he feels extremely warm at this moment. As this the Tren adventure group. Bonnie, who turned into a child, quietly observed this group of people and thought to himself. As other members besides Tom and Jerry arrived one after another, the whole scene became lively, especially when Orn and Gnosis, two tall giant-like beings, appeared on both sides. At this moment, Tren finally stood up from the chair, opened his arms like a dramatic curtain call, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly, showing a confident smile. He raised his eyes and stared at Bigmom, who was surrounded by the remaining children in the center. There was a sense of majesty and domineering in his eyes. In this case, it doesn't matter if I have more people, right? Charlotte. Linlin. P.S. Everyone, this is the new summon list. Succubus. Albal, squatting in the boat. Holy Lord. Weapon Teacher. Cell Man White King. Nautical Weather Forecast. Poseidon not decided on that version yet. Bartender. Ace Cano. Butler. Dragon Man Basseth. Disobedient Action Team. Penguins of Madagascar. Battle Angel. Icarus. Information is flying everywhere. White and Black Zetsu. Where is the family? The white bearded boss. Killer. Koro Sensei. Engine. Super Saiyan Pikachu. I have seen everyone's comments, so if everyone likes reasonable ones, Shanyu will join in, and it's Shanyu's birthday tomorrow. So tomorrow, if it's too late, I'll ask for leave, but there's also a second update on asking for leave. Chapter 199 Andy chooses to be soft. Advertise here. The Shadow Wolf King with a bounty of 4.3 billion. The Sword Demon is here too. That's the mountain god dumpling who destroyed the huge battleship San Juan Wolf with one strike. Also, fight Fujitora alone, Green Bull, fight off Doflamingo and the Cube Man Steve who exploded the bear. In addition to the dragon servant Thor, except for the absence of Tom and Jerry, known as the Double Red Stick, all the cadres of the Tren Adventure Group have appeared. The dessert banquet was full of excitement for a while, and most of the people who had some respect in the world showed a look of fear. You will die. A battle of this level. Morgans wanted to flap his wings and fly away now. No big news was important at all. He wanted to leave here first. Damn it. I wouldn't have come if I had known that. Umit gritted his teeth, his face full of regret. How could it be like this? Dorag Pikro was sweating on his forehead, and his muscles were tense all over his body. As the only one of the emperors with certain strength besides Stussy, he was already thinking about an escape route. As the Tren Adventure Group really going to war with the Bigmom pirates? Stussy took the opportunity to carry the small bag she was carrying in front of her body. There was a miniature relay phone bug in the backpack and opened her eyes. Everyone's eyes were focused on the members of the Tren Adventure Group, and their appearance made the whole scene tense. Everyone can feel the powerful aura and oppression. Big Big Wolf was still floating in the air with his cloak fluttering behind him, and his eyes revealed a ruthless majesty. Li Jing looked like a kind middle-aged man, but the incident of him knocking down Hawkeye, the former world's greatest swordsman, was still fresh in his mind. The strength of Cube Man Steve cannot be underestimated. The war on the top has faced powerful enemies such as Fujitora and Green Bull alone and Wan. Not to mention Orn and Gnosis, two guys who are as impressive as giants and can destroy all obstacles. There is also Thor standing aside. Although she has not shown much momentum, her existence is the greatest threat. The cadres of the Terran Adventure Group gathered together, and their strength and reputation had already spread throughout the world. Now, they have arrived at the territory of the Bigmom pirates. They all call me a monster, but who is the monster? The aunt looked at this scene and then at her children. She had a very strong premonition that she wouldn't even need Tren to do anything, just herself. Orn, who has always wanted to get married, can blow up his steel balloon with 3 fragile moves. Big Mom won't just die. Capone. Becky is only worried about what will happen to her plan once Big Mom is killed by Tren and his gang. It can't end before it starts. It's great to have so many people. It's fun when there are people, and Linlin likes the fun the most. The ant suddenly grinned with a ferocious smile. She opened her mouth and laughed loudly. Mom, mom, mom. Parosparrow, Katakuri and the other children turned to look at their mother. When they saw the helpless fake smile on their mother's face, they immediately understood. At this moment, their mother, the woman known as Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, one of the 4 emperors of the New World, the captain of the Big Mom pirates, and the queen of the kingdom of Totland, is kneeling on the ground. Ideologically speaking, take the initiative to put down your posture. Moreover, this step is not for that man, but for herself. She is indeed a woman who can build all nations. Tren looked at the ant's smile and sneered. In the world of pirates, those who can become the 4 emperors are all extraordinary people. At this moment, if the ant decided to go to war with herself without hesitation, then she would be really evil. When life and death are at stake, no one makes a bet easily. What's more, facing the Trent adventure group with a 100% winning rate, at least Andy herself felt that if her pirate group had gone to the war to face the enemies faced by Trent's group, the outcome would probably be on the 6th floor of Impel Down. Overcrowded. Haha, my mother's nonsense at the beginning was all because of Siraya. Parosparrow is worthy of his role as the eldest son and wise man. He stood up instantly without even a moment's hesitation. Captain Tren, you also know what's wrong with Mom. Parosparrow walked all the way to Tren. Katakuri and other children looked at this scene with worry in their eyes, because at this time Tren directly killed Parosparrow. The ant won't say anything. After all, her mother is indifferent and her children will absorb it if they say it will last. As my mother's verbal conflict due to illness, I will give you a year's income from the 14 islands of the world as an apology. Parosparrow looked at Tren flatteringly. I said I'm not interested in things like money. Tren gave Parosparrow a cold look. Quote exclamation mark quote. Just at this glance, Parosparrow suddenly felt a coldness like falling into an ice cave rushing out of his back, and thought to himself, as this murderous intention. I have never had it. He took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and continued, what do you want, Captain Tren? As long as we can do it, we will try our best to satisfy you. Tren was silent for a while, then suddenly showed a meaningful smile. Gengar, stop playing. Gengar. Gengar chuckled, and then walked out of Parosparrow's shadow. You weren't thinking just now that this feeling was my murderous intention or something, right? Open black lens bracket 5% Parosparrow close black lens bracket. How could it be? Haha. Parosparrow smiled uncomfortably, with a trace of panic in his eyes. Then he took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and then continued, the apology I just said. At this time, the white bear carrying an axe suddenly stepped forward and interrupted Parosparrow's words. He looked directly at Parosparrow, and his voice was low and firm. When White Bear heard that the islands of the nations were named, they also had corresponding production materials. Parosparrow was stunned for a moment, then nodded in affirmation. He secretly murmured in his heart that this white bear seemed to know the situation of all nations quite well. Ice Bear continued. Forget about money, Ice Bear thinks these things are more useful than money. After all, everyone usually consumes a lot of food. After saying that, he looked at Orn and Gnosis beside him, even bigger in the future. Parosparrow immediately understood what White Bear meant, and he echoed without hesitation. How about changing the main products of the 14 islands of the world? However, Ice Bear frowned and muttered dissatisfiedly, are there only 14 islands? Ice Bear can obviously own them all. White Bear slowly put down the axe on his back and rubbed the axe handle with both hands, as if thinking about something. White Bear, it was hard to sharpen the axe. Looking at the White Bear, does Parosparrow still know that this guy is? A big handshake. I want them all. Forget it, all the islands in the world produce materials, how much can their ship carry? Parosparrow thought to himself, and then nodded decisively in agreement. Then let's use the items and materials produced by all the main islands of Wanguo. Chapter 200 Discussion at Marine Headquarters. Advertise here. Just when the stalemate between Terran's gang and Big Mom started, the miniature relay phone bug in Stussy's backpack had already passed all the news to the world government's CP intelligence organization. This little phone bug, like a loyal messenger, quickly conveyed this important information to the CP intelligence organization. However, since this incident involves pirates, originally, the CP intelligence organization was mainly responsible for the affairs of the world government nobles. When faced with the pirate problem, the CP intelligence organization did not hesitate to transfer the information to Marine's New World headquarters base as quickly as possible. In the vast expanse of the New World, a majestic island that was almost completely transformed into a base stands here. The sunlight shines on the buildings at the base, reflecting dazzling light. The sea breeze blew gently, carrying a salty taste. Around the base, waves continued to hit the rocks, making bursts of roaring sounds. Warships with strange and unique shapes belonging to various generals, lieutenants, and special forces were neatly docked at the port, and the flag of Marine representing justice was also flapping in the wind. This is the headquarters base of Marine New World. It is also the new headquarters of Marine after arriving in Marineland, and it was renamed New Marineland. Yes, the Warring States period was so uncreative. At this time, in the conference room of Marine headquarters, an important discussion was going on intensely. Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku was sitting at the head of the table with a solemn expression. Behind him was no longer a projector phone bug, but the latest broadcast screen technology provided by the Science and Technology Force, which was not available in the original Marine Fando conference room. Sengoku glanced at everyone present, and then slowly said, "Everyone, we are summoned today to discuss the latest developments of the BIGMOM Pirates and Trends group. According to the information we have obtained after receiving the information from CP spies, the relationship between these two forces has become increasingly complicated. The appearance of the Tren adventure group on Big Mom's Cake Island is something to be nervous about. Now there is a possibility of an outbreak between them, but we cannot rule out that they deliberately misled us. So we have to judge whether they will form an alliance, go to war, or there are other possibilities." Quote. "It's boring." Lieutenant General Garp took a bite of senbei and said carelessly. "Staff." He folded his hands on the table and analyzed calmly. "We can't just look at the surface of CP's intelligence. The BIGMOM Pirates and Trends gang have their own plans. If they form an alliance, it will most likely be to carve up some huge benefit. But if a war breaks out, Marine must get involved as soon as possible and cannot sit idly by, missing the mark. After all, Big Mom is very likely to lose." Quote. Warring States nodded and said, "What Crane said makes sense. We must deeply analyze their motives and purposes in order to make accurate judgments and formulate corresponding countermeasures." Garp's mouth was filled with senbei and he said vaguely, "Others, what do you think?" "Ha." Suddenly a sneer-like laughter came. "Sakazuki." Sengoku looked to his left. Yes, the meeting was arranged in a long table. Akainu was the first on Sengoku's left hand, and Aokiji was the first on his right. The next two people were Green Bull and Fujitora. Garp and Kizunori were also sitting in the row to the right of Aokiji. Kizaru said he was going to Marigio for support, but he was obviously fishing again, so he wasn't there. General Akainu clasped his hands on his chest and said with a serious face, "In my opinion, the BIGMOM Pirates and Trends group are not fuel-efficient lamps, and the possibility of war between them is extremely high. At the same time, this may be a good opportunity for us to take advantage of them to attack them. After all, they both lose and we gain." Quote. Ouch. Aokiji leaned back on the chair. Although his tone was still lazy, his expression was no longer as relaxed as before. "Don't jump to conclusions so quickly. Although BIGMOM has a bad temper, she is not stupid either. She might choose to form an alliance with Tren for profit. In other words, even if there is a conflict, they will choose to submit. Don't underestimate Four Emperors' scheming." Quote. Green Bull frowned slightly, and after thinking for a moment, he said, "What does it have to do with forming an alliance and starting a war? I think it would be better if we Marine took the opportunity to intensify their conflicts. After all, pirates will eventually be defeated by justice. Even One Piece Roger, isn't that the same?" Fujitora sat aside, closed his eyes, and said seriously, "Whether they form an alliance or go to war, it will not be a good thing for the civilians. What we should be more concerned about now is the people of the Kingdom of Totland, all nations. Our Marines' duty is to uphold justice and protect the people." Quote. "Submit to the pirates and serve the pirates, haha. Then they should know what the price will be," Akainu said coldly, while Marine's eyes were cold under his cap. "That's because justice is late, and they are waiting for justice in their hearts." Aokiji Kaido. "Haha, in my opinion, justice should be absolute. In order to achieve justice, even if it means sacrificing everything, then we will not hesitate. If you give up killing pirates because of the soft-heartedness of a small number of people who have taken refuge in pirates and lived quietly, it would be an injustice to more victims." Akainu looked at Aokiji with a very unkind look in his eyes, but Aokiji was not afraid at all and spoke calmly. "The purpose of justice is kindness and protection. If you sacrifice yourself at all costs in pursuit of justice, it may cause more harm, and justice will only become the name of massacre." Green Bull couldn't bear it any longer and interrupted loudly, "Only absolute justice can deter pirates." Fujitora's face darkened, and he slowly opened his white eyes and said softly, "If you just insist on emphasizing absolutes, it is very likely that you will wrong good people and even destroy some originally beautiful things. The justice we pursue should not only curb evil, but also preserve the warmth and kindness of human nature." Quote. Green Bull frowned after hearing this and retorted, "If there is no absolute justice, those vicious pirates will be even more unscrupulous. This is the era of great pirates." Smile. Fujitora responded firmly, "However, if it is too absolute, innocent people may be implicated, which will violate the original intention of justice. Don't forget why justice exists, Huang Mu." Quote. At this moment, Aokiji, who had been silent all the time, suddenly raised his head and stared at Akainu closely. The two looked at each other in front of the conference table. For a while, the atmosphere became tense and full of gunpowder. In an instant, they both stood up at the same time and said in unison, "Kuzan, you are so gentle and soft. Sakazuki, you are too extreme and absolute."